the Nintendo PlayStation.
Hey, plumber boy, mustache man, your worst nightmare has arrived.
Pack up your stuff. I got a little surprise for you here. Check it out.
It's hard to believe we have Nintendo to thank for the PlayStation. If not for the Big N's shady business practices, the future of Sony and PlayStation could have looked much different. Sony originally partnered with Nintendo to develop a disc-based console tentatively titled the Nintendo PlayStation, only for Nintendo to announce they had killed the deal and partnered with Philips instead. Sony, understandably enraged by this sudden change, even attempted to partner with Sega, only for Sega to also turn them down. Undeterred, Sony pressed forward with the PlayStation, and due to its impressive processing power as well as user-friendly CD-based technology, it easily dominated Nintendo and even likely led to Sega dropping out of the console wars. Nintendo, attempting to maintain a stranglehold on their business, inadvertently created their greatest challenger.
How's that make you feel, buddy? Feel a little like your days are numbered?
I'm gonna have to ask you to leave.
You're hurting my elbow.
Prototype controllers. Like any new piece of technology making its first steps into a budding market, not only did the console itself go through a few changes, but the controller ended up being the one with the most revisions. Originally, Sony wanted something more akin to the SNES controller, but eventually settled on classic PS1 design with the additional shoulder buttons and the handlebar grips for more comfort when using the extra buttons. Some reports have the number of prototypes at over 200 potential designs, with the final one decided by then Sony president and former pilot Norio Oga, who likened the grips to that of an airplane control wheel. 2D or 3D.
Beyond the edge of reality lies a story of ultimate conquest, a story of war and friendship, a story of a love that can never be.
Given this was the early days of 3D in gaming, Sony struggled with whether to make their new PlayStation focus on 2D or 3D gaming. While 2D was the dominant artistic style of the time, Sony was looking towards the future with their console, but was still unsure if the technology was ready for the leap to the new dimension. That is, however, until Sega released Virtua Fighter in arcades, and the prospects of 3D gaming became clear to Sony, and they decided to focus primarily on making the PlayStation the dominant powerhouse of the budding 3D gaming scene. We still could have done without Bubsy 3D though.
There's nothing keeping me on this level anymore. Let's blow this popsicle stand.
The PlayStation logo. The now iconic PlayStation logo is by far one of Sony's most recognizable brands, and much like everything else when designing the PlayStation, the logo itself went through a number of changes and iterations, each with the unique approach to the classic lettering PlayStation is known for today. Reportedly, there were roughly 20 variations of the design before the classic PlayStation logo we all know and love was settled on. What's more is each of the 4 colors within the logo have their own meaning, representing brilliance, joy, passion, and excellence. The more you know. Cost-saving CDs.
Turn left.
It's no secret that developing for cartridges was expensive, which is why Sony's approach to CDs was such a boom for developers. Not only was the cost significantly less, but the CDs themselves also had much more processing power and memory, allowing devs to develop bigger and more expansive games and worlds. Games like Final Fantasy VII initially started development on Nintendo's N64, but moved to the PlayStation after being convinced by the additional power and performance. Not only did this allow more graphically demanding games to be created, but also significantly cut down on development time, allowing developers and publishers to bring their vision to life and capitalize on current trends in half the time. The boot up sound. The boot-up sound of the original PlayStation is so iconic, even simply hearing it can trigger lifelong nostalgic memories of some of the best gaming moments in the 90s, and nothing else even comes close. Original composer Takafumi Fujisawa created this incredible boot-up sound to create a sense of wonder and excitement at the prospect of entering a new world before the start of every game. Considering how beloved this sound is even today, and its synonymous nature with the PlayStation brand, we'd say he more than succeeded, and we wish all PlayStation games still started with this iconic track. Button mapping. With the design of the controller finally nailed down, Sony also wanted to make their buttons stand out from the competition. While they initially were looking to adapt something more akin to Sega Genesis's controller, they instead opted for something much more comfortable and easier to map numerous control schemes to. Even more interesting is that every one of the face buttons have individual meanings behind them. The triangle represents the player's viewpoint, the square refers to maps and menus, and the red circle signifies yes or continue, while the blue X represents no or cancel. The designations of circle and X were eventually changed in the West due to differing viewpoints on the symbols, but the overall design has remained relatively unchanged for 30 years. And no, we will never call the X button cross.
When humanity conforms to a single truth, a truth based in technological progress and scientific method, we will be unstoppable.
Motor Tune Grand Prix. Sony didn't want to just create the PlayStation and let other developers craft their library. They wanted to have their hands in every aspect of the console and its rise to fame. Part of this included developing and publishing their own games, and their first release didn't make it out of Japan, but still showed great promise. Motor Tune Grand Prix was a pretty standard racing game, but with an old school cartoon aesthetic that helped it stand out from the crowded genre. It did well enough to earn a sequel, but the developer and particularly game director Kazunori Yamauchi showed enough potential they were granted the opportunity to work on their dream project, which would eventually become Gran Turismo and one of the best-selling games on the PS1. Greatness from small beginnings. An audiophile's dream. Not only was the PS1 revolutionary when it came to graphical power, but the CD technology inside the PS1, and with Sony's background in sound design, it's no surprise the PS1 had an impressive audio output that many dedicated audiophiles still swear even today is one of the best CD players ever created. Considering at a time a solid dedicated CD player could run anywhere between $200 to $1,000, the PS1 was not only a great console for gaming, but an affordable CD player with an incredible output paired with an equally capable sound system. Specifically, it was the earlier models that far outplayed the competition, which ironically were also typically manufactured by Sony themselves. Sony would even outprice themselves again when it came to DVD players with the PS2 and Blu-ray players with the PS3 later on down the line. Memory card save. The early days of saving games was a struggle to say the least. Some games didn't have a save feature at all or used convoluted password systems to allow players to pick up where they left off. Neither were optimal, but they got the job done, for better or worse. Although they weren't the first game console to make use of external storage, the PS1 had by far the most storage available to players, with 128 kilobytes letting them save up to 15 games per memory card. While this seems insignificant now, this simple improvement over the established formula led to a revolution for game saves going forward, and thank God, because the old password system was just beyond ridiculous. The longest development. Not only is the original Gran Turismo the best-selling game on the PS1, but it also had the longest development cycle of any PS1 game ever. While extended development times these days are nothing new, and the typical cycle is 5 to 7 years at this point, back on the PS1, developers and publishers were routinely releasing new games or sequels with significant improvements year over year. The ambition of the game, alongside a small development team of only roughly 12 developers, led to a prolonged development for a team dedicated to making the most authentic racing sim of all time. Considering Gran Turismo sold almost 10 million copies and launched a highly respected racing series, it's safe to say Sony and Polyphony Digital's gamble paid off. A hated mascot.
No match for the Bandicoot! Poetry in motion.
You are not authorized to operate this equipment.
Quiet or I'll crush you.
While the PS1 doesn't officially have a mascot, if there was one gamers most associated with the console, it would have to be Crash Bandicoot. Crash would routinely appear in commercials calling out Nintendo and their famous plumber, but the godfather of PlayStation, Ken Kutaragi, hated the character and especially didn't like the Bandicoot representing the PS1, even in an unofficial capacity. Kutaragi wanted the PS1 to be a more mature style game system, and having a wide-eyed marsupial standing outside Nintendo headquarters taunting them felt inauthentic to his vision for the console. Thankfully, the rest of Sony had more appreciation for Crash, or else we could have ended up with Kutaragi's original vision for a mascot, Polygon Man. Yikes.
Power
is an illusion. Absolute power is a seamless illusion.
2 to 5 discs.
Thank God you've returned. I need your help.
Although the CD-based architecture of the PS1 allowed developers to create bigger and more detailed games than ever before, that doesn't mean their ambition could always be contained by a single disc. This became a growing issue as developers began to get more ambitious and unlock the full potential of the PS1 throughout the console's life cycle, especially with the Final Fantasy series utilizing 4 discs by the time of Final Fantasy VIII and Final Fantasy IX. And yet, there was still one game that went even further and required a whopping 5 discs. Riven, the sequel to Myst, and a staggering, for the time anyways, 2 gigabytes total in size. Much of that storage was used up by the game's many FMV sequences within the game that many other developers at the time used much more sparingly.
If this all goes well, I might be able to get you back to the place that you came from.
Mystery marketing.
Here we have a normal, healthy young man. And here we have a fellow who's been experimenting with PlayStation for only a few minutes.
Those bizarre PS3 commercials and somehow even stranger David Lynch PS2 ad weren't the first time Sony's marketing team took a bizarre approach to advertising their new hardware. With the PS1, Sony leaned heavily into what they perceived as gamers' competitive nature and released a series of odd commercials, some with taglines such as "You are not ready" and a flurry of hidden messages for gamers to decipher. While most of the riddles ended up pointing to nothing more than the release date of the PS1, this bizarre marketing push worked in Sony's favor and remains a time capsule of 90s culture and the beginning of Sony's strange approach to advertising their consoles. Honestly, we miss this brand of advertising compared to the bland nothing of today. Also, bring back Kevin Butler, you cowards.
So what's the job?
VP First-Person Shooter Relations. Hi.
Nice to meet you.
Son of a...
E3 mic drop. After their disastrous dealings with Nintendo, Sony also had to make a significant impact on a skeptical public, debuting as a brand new console manufacturer in a market dominated by Atari, Nintendo, and Sega. While at the time E3 wasn't the enormous media bonanza it would eventually become, it was still developers and publishers' best chance to get noticed, and after showcasing all the specs of their new console at E3 1995, Sony's Steve Race approached the podium and announced the PS1 price point in a pure mic drop moment by simply declaring
$299.
and walking off stage to an eruption of cheers from the audience. Not only was the delivery brilliant, but the $299 price point put them $100 cheaper than their nearest competition, the Sega Saturn. Price wars. Sega wasn't the only ones upset about Sony's sly marketing to undercut the competition. After being almost wholly responsible for the gaming crash, Atari was struggling to reclaim its dominance in the gaming market, and suddenly some fresh hip newcomer is going to come in and steal their thunder? Not on Atari's watch. Atari even went so far as to threaten to go to the International Trade Commission over Sony's competitive pricing model, claiming the only fair pricing for Sony's PlayStation would be $500, the same price the console initially launched for in Japan. It's unknown if these attempts to force the ITC to intervene gained any traction, but guess who's still a console juggernaut and who's not? Net Yaroze. Believe it or not, the PS1 had something of an indie developer scene. The Net Yaroze was a sleek black version of the PS1 that was modeled after the dev kits that Sony had sent to developers and publishers and allowed homegrown devs to bring their creations to life in the same way the big studios did. For $750, aspiring creators could order the Net Yaroze through the mail, and Sony even offered support to some of these indie developers by putting their games on demo discs to get them into players' hands. Many now well-regarded developers got their start thanks to the Net Yaroze, which in Japanese roughly translates to "let's do it together." Although primitive by today's standards, the Net Yaroze is still an incredibly forward-thinking machine and is incredibly rare due to its limited production. A worthy catalog.
I've been waiting for you, Solid Snake. Now we'll see if the man can live up to the legend.
Absolutely no one could accuse the PS1 of having a meager catalog of games, but few understand just how monumental the PS1's roster of games truly was. The PS1 offered games of every genre and for every age group, making it the ideal console for the entire family, no matter their age. With reportedly almost 1 billion with a capital B games shipped for the then rookie console, the sheer number of options of games to play was staggering to say the least. While the true number is unknown, many speculate as many as 3,000 games were created and released for the PS1 during its life cycle from the years 1994 to 2006. This number would only be surpassed by the PS1's successor, the PS2, with an equally eye-watering 4,300 games.
Oh, your secret's safe with me.
The rarest of rare. The Net Yaroze isn't the only rare PS1 console Sony produced, and to celebrate the PlayStation selling 10 million units, Sony released the Midnight Blue edition of the console. This version of the console is so rare only 100 of them were ever produced, making them highly sought after collector's items. The consoles weren't the only ones to see limited releases either. The rarest game ever released for the PS1 was Elemental Gearbolt Assassin's Case Edition, which came with the game, a golden light gun, carrying case, and a special edition memory card. Reportedly, there were only 50 of these special editions ever produced. Sony would continue to use these limited edition PS1s for specific celebrations and sent out golden PS1s as invitations to the E3 press conference in 2013. The original PSVR. Virtual reality might be the latest tech these days, but even after the utter failure of Nintendo's Virtua Boy, that didn't stop Sony from preemptively dipping their toes into the realms of VR. Released in 1996, the Glasstron wasn't too dissimilar to the PSVR fans are familiar with today, but was only functional specifically with one game, MechWarrior 2. With the headset and attached earbuds, players could pilot their mech from the cockpit with the headset's primitive eye tracking, allowing them to more easily track their targets. Naturally, the headset didn't take off, and has become yet another relic in Sony's legacy of abandoned peripherals. Toys to Life.
史上初テレビゲームと立体ロボを融合させた対戦格闘ソフトゼクシード
The Toys to Life craze might have peaked in the mid-2000s, but once again, Sony was ahead of the curve on the PS1. Long before Skylanders dominated the Toys to Life scene, the PS1 had ZXED Legend of Plasma Light, in which you could build variations of different robots using the included pieces, and the game would recognize whatever mech you built, no matter how outrageous, and after plugging your creation into the game, you could then battle with your mechanized warrior. Like many of the PS1's odd peripherals, this one was ahead of its time and failed to find an audience, killing any possibility for a follow-up for decades. Apple Emulator.
Now, this is another game machine. It's the most popular game machine in the world. Wouldn't it be great if we could play some of those titles too?
Emulators are fairly common these days, but back during the PS1, Sony was quite a bit stricter about who could play their games if it wasn't on their machine. During an Apple conference in 1999, Steve Jobs unveiled a PS1 emulator called the Virtual Game Station for the Mac, and understandably, Sony was not pleased with this development and immediately filed a lawsuit against the emulator creator Kinetics. While the ruling eventually ended in favor of Kinetics, Sony blocked Kinetics from selling their emulator while the lawsuit was ongoing, and ended up purchasing Virtual Game Station from Kinetics and immediately shutting it down.
But there you go, working just like on a PlayStation, same controls, same title.
Pirate Aliens.
USM Auriga, all systems nominal. Containment field at maximum.
Game developers have been hiding secrets in their games for years. Whether it was the hidden game credits in Adventure for the Atari 2600, or the cheeky devs who somehow hid the pilot episode of South Park within Tiger Woods' 99 PGA Golf Tour, there's no shortage of interesting or even game-breaking secrets. However, one that went overlooked for decades can be found in the often forgotten Alien Resurrection game for the PS1. Within the game, unintentionally or not, the devs included code that would allow players to play pirated games on their PS1 without the need for a mod chip, completely bypassing all of Sony's piracy measures. Sony's probably pretty happy this code went undiscovered for 23 years.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Internet ready.
This is Snake. Colonel, can you hear me? Loud and clear.
Internet connectivity on consoles might have still been a generation away, but Sony still found a way to allow players to connect online with the PS1, even in its most rudimentary form. Released only in Japan, using a special adapter, the PS1 could connect to a player's cell phone and could connect to the World Wide Web, and even download simple games from the internet to play on your phone. Likely due to the limited capabilities and the obscurity of this specific usage for the PS1, it was discontinued rather abruptly, while the PS2 would be the first true PlayStation with online play capabilities.
You can have regrets if you want to. It's only natural. But you can't keep attacking yourself for things that happened in the past. That road leads to madness. Believe me.
Save your saves. There's nothing worse than accidentally deleting your beloved save file for your favorite game. Unlike today, where these saves can be recovered from the cloud, back in the days of the PS1, if you accidentally deleted your save, that was it, and it was gone forever. However, there was a hidden feature that would allow you to recover those lost saves, and it wasn't discovered until decades later. By holding down all 4 shoulder buttons, you can recover any recently deleted game saves. But if you turn off the console between deleting them and trying to recover them, they're still gone forever. PS1 to PS2. Despite the PS1 having one of the most extensive libraries in all of gaming, there were still a few games that were originally planned for the PlayStation, but whether due to the imminent release of the more powerful PS2 on the horizon, or the extended development time of some titles, a few planned PS1 games missed their original release and were rebuilt for the PS2. Two of the most notable are Onimusha Warlords, which was over 50% complete before development was scrapped and restarted for the PS2, with a similar situation befalling the masterpiece Ico as well. Ico began development for the PS1 in 1998, and while development was progressing smoothly, the team's vision grew, and their ambition necessitated the move to the more powerful PS2. Powering the stars. The PS1, once upon a time, was one of the most powerful consoles on the market and was so reliable that even NASA took notice. Despite the technology being dated at the time, NASA chose to use the PS1 CPU to power their Horizon space probe for Pluto in 2006 due to its processing power and reliability and sustainability after some important modifications. The PS1 might be a retro console today celebrating its 30th birthday. Thanks to NASA and the Horizon probe, the PS1 will live on forever amongst the stars. Level of detail.
Looks like I've got some things to do.
The PS1 might have revolutionized 3D gaming, but that didn't mean the system still wasn't without its limitations. One such disadvantage was the draw distance of many games, which could lead to quite a lot of pop-in when the player was exploring larger worlds. Some devs got creative with solutions such as the fog and Silent Hill, while other devs tackled the issue directly. Naturally, it was the wizards at Insomniac Games who developed a solution with their inventive level of detail system, which would render objects in the environment in higher detail the closer the player got to them. This eliminated the constant use of fog or other techniques to mask the system's technical limitations and create far more expansive and detailed worlds to immerse the player in. This technique is still being used even today to even greater effect thanks to the advancements in technology.
How do you feel?
I feel fired up, Bob, and I'm happy for the Dragon World, of course.
102 million.
That's right. This is no trick. It's true power.
It goes without saying that the PS1 was an unprecedented success for Sony and for gamers. With a gaming library that still rivals anything today, a memorable marketing campaign, and some of the most inventive and highly regarded games and series of all time, the PS1 more than established its place as one of the best consoles of all time. The PS1 also managed the impossible, and for the time became the best-selling console of all time, managing to sell a staggering 102 million systems in its lifetime, completely dominating the competition with the N64 only selling 32 million systems, and the Sega Saturn ending its run only selling 9 million. Even today, the PS1 remains the 6th best-selling console of all time.
Hey, will you guys keep it down?
Hey, loosen up, kids! I'm on fire!
The end of an era. The PS1 had one of the longest life cycles of a console, debuting in 1994 and finally being discontinued in 2006. During that time, many developers continued to support the aging system despite the much more powerful PS2 dominating the market. While many of the games were nothing more than downgraded ports of PS2 games, there was still nonetheless a strong market for PS1 games well into the system's twilight years. The final game officially released for the PS1 after Sony announced its retirement in North America was FIFA 2005, because EA was determined to release their sports titles on anything that could run them. While the final game in Japan was a re-release of Capcom's classic arcade title Strider Hiryu. Rest easy now, PS1, your work is finally complete.
Legally changing name.
Sorry, Grandma.
I'm putting this one first, not because it's not hilarious, but because it's not technically about the PS2 itself, just PS2 adjacent. We've all done some questionable things for the stuff we love. But have you ever loved something so much you changed your name for it? No, I wasn't talking to you, Nintenlith Gamillion Cubus III. Back in 2002, a British man named Dan Holmes loved his PlayStation 2. He loved it so much, he legally renamed himself Mr. PlayStation 2. Yep, government ID and all. He even asked the church if he could marry his PS2, which is disgusting, as it wasn't even 18 until 2018. One v3. The PlayStation 2 was Sony's follow-up to the original PlayStation, the cooler older sibling that got all the attention. It was part of the 6th generation of consoles, launched to go head-to-head with Sega's Dreamcast, which hit Japan in 1998. But did you realize the PS2 took out multiple generations? It ended up taking on the Nintendo GameCube and the original Xbox, both of which dropped in 2001. Meanwhile, the poor Dreamcast got discontinued that same year, waving goodbye to the console war like, it's fine, I didn't want to be successful anyway. That moment officially marked the end of Sega's career as a console maker. Sony didn't just beat Sega, they took their ball home. Different colors.
Why don't you make yourself useful? My darn green eco-collectors are clogged up again.
PS2 games could come on both CD-ROMs and DVDs, but many didn't realize that they were all color-coded. The CDs were blue, and the DVDs were silver. Talk about fancy color coding. It's like Sony wanted your game collection to double as a mood ring. And this wasn't their first time getting artsy with discs. Remember the original PlayStation? Those game CDs were black. How emo. Where are you?
Rule number 1, I don't date animals.
A flying start. Everyone knows the PS2 was a beast in sales and performance, proving to be arguably the greatest console of all time. But did you know that within one day, they had demolished sales most consoles only dream of? The Nintendo GameCube maybe cracked 500,000 units after day one, numbers vary. The PS2, 1 million units sold on day one. Whoa.
Found a couple of suckers. Yeah. Do we have sucker written all over us?
Earth and space. Sony's always been a bit poetic when it comes to their consoles. They can't just make a system, they have to give it meaning, or a weird baby mannequin commercial. Remember the PS1 logo? Those colorful shapes were supposed to represent joy, passion, and excellence, basically the emotional range of Crash Bandicoot. Then came the PS2 logo, which went a different direction. Gone with the bright colors, in came a sleek design that looked like it belonged on the poster for a sci-fi horror flick. Turns out, that was kind of the point. The blue font represents Earth, and the black background symbolizes the vast emptiness of space. Very deep. Literally.
Welcome to the third place.
PlayStation 2! The third place!
Remember the towers. If there's one thing everyone remembers about the PS2, it's that iconic intro screen. Those mysterious white towers surrounded by glowing orbs. Pure magic. Turns out those skyscrapers actually represented your memory card save files. The more saves you had, the taller and denser the skyline. I didn't even realize it was changing. Imagine applying that same idea today with consoles that come with 500 gigabytes or more. You create a goddamn city.
5.73.
She's also in charge of recording your mission data. Whenever you want to save, send a message over the reserved save frequency, 140.96.
It can connect to the PSP.
Hey, check out this sweet game I got.
That ain't built for big boy games. That's built for texting your grandma and calling your girl.
You text your grandma?
Of course I do. And for $9.99, you could be playing this on a PSP.
The PSP is my favorite handheld console of all time, which is controversial apparently, but I loved it. I know it was wildly outsold by the DS, but my brothers were already beating me up for not playing Call of Duty, so I couldn't be caught playing Animal Crossing. Not again. My original thought with the PSP was that its graphics and gameplay matched the PS2, with most games looking even better, which is wild considering I could play it on the toilet. But the connections are even more substantial. Did you know that you could actually connect with the PlayStation 2? Yep, the two systems could talk to each other. Titles like SOCOM US Navy SEALs Combined Assault and Metal Gear Solid 3 Snake Eater unlocked special content for the PSP versions, and in Metal Gear Solid 3 Subsistence, you could even transfer in-game photos to view in Metal Gear Acid 2. Everyone was too busy connecting to their PS3, not realizing the PS2 was quietly sitting in wait.
One, spread your wings and fly. God be with you.
PC, Mac, and PS2.
This is Linux for the PlayStation 2, which was an official product released by Sony in 2002.
The development kit for the PS1, the Net Euros, or Net Eurosi, was basically a playground for hobbyist programmers, allowing anyone to make games. While the indie scene wasn't quite the powerhouse it is today, it was still a pretty generous move on Sony's part. Then came the PS2, and Sony decided to level up the DIY game dev experience. In came the PS2 Linux kit, which turned your humble PlayStation into a full-blown personal computer. The kit came with a Linux OS disk, a 40GB hard drive, a USB keyboard and mouse, a network adapter, and even an installation disk. With this setup, you could browse the internet, code your own games, and even pretend you were a real developer. How cool.
Runtime environment. So we put that disk into the machine. We'll watch it start up.
Crazy compatible. Buying a new console usually means saying goodbye to your old one, like sending your childhood pet to live on a farm. I'm still not over my PSP, but the PS2 made this pain easier to bear with backwards compatibility. You could pop in your PlayStation 1 games and relive the polygonal glory days right on your shiny new PS2. But did you know the backwards compatibility went a step further? It supported PS1 accessories like memory cards and DualShock controllers. The secret sauce behind it all was the Emotion Engine, the PS2's powerful CPU that made this compatibility possible. The emotion that engine cured was depression. Don't forget how small it was. Many have forgotten, or just didn't realize entirely, that the standard PlayStation 2 memory card had a whopping, drumroll please, 8 megabytes of storage. Yep, 8 MB. That's less than a single photo on your phone today. Back then though, it felt like holding the power of the universe in your hands. You'd save Grand Theft Auto San Andreas and still have space left over for a couple Tony Hawk runs. Living large. The original PS2 also came packed with 2 USB ports, a FireWire port for all 5 people who used it, and some models even had an expansion bay for a hard drive. Thanks Sony, because this helped me this year when I put all my PS2 games onto a hard drive for my PS2 so I could never change discs. PS2's ancestor. The sleek black design of the PS2 made it look less like a gaming console and more like something stolen off a sci-fi movie set. Love it or hate it, you can't deny that the PlayStation 2 is a stunning piece of tech. But here's the plot twist. That futuristic design wasn't 100% Sony's idea. Back in the early 90s, Atari released a personal computer called the Atari Falcon 030. It was a hit among amateur developers, but got discontinued in 1993. Before that, Atari had been cooking up an upgraded model, the Falcon 040. And guess what? That sleek prototype ended up inspiring the PS2's design. Look at them. It's wild. PlayStation 2 Online. When Xbox first launched with online multiplayer, it completely blindsided the gaming world. Sure, the Dreamcast technically had online play, but let's be honest, it was more please don't disconnect than next-gen experience. But did you know that 2 years after launch, Sony finally introduced proper online play for the PS2 with the network adapter? It plugged neatly into the back of the console. You could also connect via dial-up, but only for select games, and mostly for downloading stuff slower than a sloth on vacation. Games like Killzone and Final Fantasy XI became online hits, proving the PS2 could hold its own, even if its servers occasionally felt held together with duct tape and hope. A massive disk error code. Sony and scandals go together like consoles and overheating fans. It's just part of the package at this point. Remember the 2011 PSN hacking? That little incident where the personal data of 77 million users got compromised and everyone was locked out of the PlayStation network? Remember that little thing? Remember that little... Turns out Sony's drama didn't start with the internet age. Oh no. Back in 2002, the company got slapped with a class action lawsuit over the PS2 itself. Players kept getting the dreaded disc read error message, meaning their beloved game discs and DVDs were now fancy coasters. Some eventually settled, offering free repairs and a $25 check and a free PS2 game from a set list, which probably included a bunch of games nobody actually wanted.
Offline on April 20th after the intrusion was detected. Computer security companies have been analysing the attack, and its extent is still not clear.
The actual PlayStation War. This is a little more dark, but behind all the success of the PS2 was a story that most gamers never knew about. The PS2's hardware relied on a mineral called coltan, a key ingredient for making electronic components. The problem? Most of the world's coltan supplies come from Africa, particularly the Democratic Republic of Congo, where things were, well, not exactly ethically sourced. Local rebel groups in the Congo saw a golden, or rather metallic grey, opportunity. They took control of the mines, forcing people to work in brutal conditions and committing horrific acts of violence, especially against women. Tragically, the demand for the consoles like the PS2 helped fund these rebel operations, even if unintentionally. PSP DualShock 2. The PSP was a nice leap forward in gaming from the PS2, but for all its brilliance, the PSP had one glaring flaw: no second joystick. That's right, gamers were forced to control the camera with either the shoulder buttons or the face buttons, depending on how much finger gymnastics they could handle. It was like trying to parallel park with one eye closed. Sony, being Sony, tried to fix it. Kind of. They filed a patent for an accessory that would let players connect a PS2 DualShock 2 controller to their PSP. Basically, it would have turned your sleek handheld into a tiny console booth that looked like something out of a gaming convention demo station. Portable? Sure, if your pockets were the size of a backpack.
Crowd patrol! Army!
PS2 HD without the MI. Before HDMI took over our living rooms and became the one cable to rule them all, we had standard definition cables, and even though there's a good chunk of under 30s who are just now realizing this, that's not the fact for this entry. The PlayStation 2's native resolution was a humble 480i, and we thought it was mind-blowing. But here's the fun bit of trivia: a few PS2 games actually supported 1080i. Yeah, you heard that right. High definition. Before it was cool. If you had the right component cables and enough patience, you could dive into the settings and menus and switch your game to 1080i mode. For example, Gran Turismo 4 would flex its 1080i muscles during races, but then sheepishly downgrade back to 480i in the menus, like a sports car that stalls at a red light. The PS2 that featured a video recorder.
So this is the Sony PSX DVR, a hybrid video game system and digital video recorder. My model, the DESR 5100, comes standard with a 160GB hard drive installed.
The PlayStation 2 wasn't just a console, it was an all-in-one entertainment hub before smart TVs thought they were special. But Sony wasn't done showing off. In 2003, they released the PSX, not to be confused with the nickname for the original PlayStation. This was a Japan-exclusive supercharged PS2 that basically tried to be the Swiss Army knife of electronics. It had everything: a built-in hard drive, a DVD recorder, and even the cross-media bar XMB interface that would later make its way to the PSP and PS3. The thing overheated faster than your console during a 12-hour God of War session. Despite all its fancy bells and whistles, the PSX flopped harder than a failed boss run. It was discontinued barely a year later.
Cross-media bar is a user interface that was used in both the Sony PlayStation 3 and PSP.
Dual Sensitivity 2.0. The DualShock 2 is one of those rare pieces of tech that quietly deserves a standing ovation. Sure, critics grumbled that it looked almost identical to the original DualShock, but don't let its familiar shape fool you. It was lighter than the original, and more importantly, it introduced analog button sensitivity. Basically, the harder you pressed a button, the more your in-game actions responded. Think of it like teaching a controller how to feel your emotions. The PS2's approach allowed for subtler control, and though few developers used it, the ones who did made magic happen. In Metal Gear Solid 2 and MGS3 Snake Eater, you could lightly press the square button to ready your weapon, then mash it harder to fire. Racing games also got in on the fun, using button sensitivity to fine-tune your acceleration and braking. No more flooring it and praying you don't spin out.
Floor to you, okay? Understood.
8 players.
Apparently not, Johnny. These intergalactic predators are known as the Skrull.
Many players realized at one point or another that some games supported 4 players. The problem was that the PS2 only came with 2 controller ports. It took most players years to discover the magic of the multi-tap accessory. Plug it in and suddenly your PS2 could handle 4 additional controllers and memory card slots. But did you know that for some games, and if you had 2 multi-taps, boom, up to 8 players and memory cards all at once. Instant party. It was perfect for sports games like NHL or Madden NFL, or for anyone who hated the constant memory card shuffle at the main menu. How the other half lived, eh? PS2 Brazil.
Cloth Map came to Brazil with one goal in mind: to understand the country's parallel video game universe.
Ah, the PlayStation 2. Every owner remembers that magical first moment, that first Christmas, that first paycheck from their first job. But try asking your Brazilian friend about their first PS2 and you might get a very different story. Why? Because in Brazil, the console didn't officially arrive until 2009, nearly a decade after its original launch. That's right, while the rest of the world was already deep into GTA 4, Brazilian fans were just cracking into GTA 3. Before you start blaming Sony, the real culprit was Brazilian import taxes, which made electronics ridiculously expensive. Let's just say Brazilian gamers didn't get early adopter perks, they got late adopter, pay more perks.
To play an American cartridge, you need to buy an adapter. There was a lot of confusion back then. You would buy a magazine that said Nintendo games, but your console, it didn't say anything about Nintendo, so people were very confused and they started putting compatible with Nintendo.
Burned discs. Back in the days of the original PlayStation, players could play burned CDs without even touching their console, thanks to the legendary disc swap trick. When the PS2 came along, it was technically possible too, but now you had to play Surgeon and open the top of your console. Luckily, Swap Magic saved the day. Here's how it worked. First, you popped the Swap Magic disc into your PS2 and booted it up. Then, using a thin solid object, think credit card, butter knife, whatever wouldn't ruin your console, you manually pulled the tray and swapped in your burned discs. Boot the game from the Swap Magic menu and voila, instant gameplay. Who knew? Not me. PS2 with no TV. Thanks to its longevity, the PlayStation 2 got a treasure trove of third-party accessories that changed the way we use the console. But here's one you might have missed. Several companies tried their hand at making portable screens. Some were tiny and charming, like the original mini LCD, while others were basically PS2-sized monitors. They could double as small TVs. Quality varied wildly, but the small portable monitors, surprisingly solid. While we'll always prefer the big screen experience, it's fun to see creative companies breathing new life into one of Sony's most beloved consoles, making it almost portable.
Now when you're looking now in 2021 at this monitor, You were thinking, holy crap, this doesn't look that great.
All types of controllers. Most of us only ever knew the PS2 with the DualShock 2 in our hands, and honestly, no complaints. But no console has had as many weird officially released controllers than the PS2. When Resident Evil 4 hit the PS2, they officially licensed a chainsaw-like controller. Spooky, tactile, and a definite no-go for carry-on luggage. Then, for Onimusha 3 Demon Siege, they released the Soul controller, basically a katana-shaped controller that has the exact same issue. Clever concepts, sure. Practical, not so much. Pretty as a collector's item? Absolutely. PS2 had Netflix before it was cool. It's wild to think how Netflix completely changed the way we watch movies. Now it's basically baked into every smart TV. Most Sony players didn't have a Netflix app on their console till the PS4, but here's a fun little PS2 trivia bomb. Netflix was actually available on the PS2. Yep. Before you get excited, there's a catch. It was only in Brazil. Remember how the PS2 launched there in 2009? Remember that entry from before? By that point, Netflix had already switched to streaming, and since the PS2 couldn't download apps, Brazilian fans had to pop in a licensed Netflix DVD, connect to the internet, and then stream. Fancy. Actually, it's super not fancy. Long live the PS2.
It's like Christmas Day for you.
These days, most modern consoles have a lifespan of about 8 years before companies pull the plug. Sure, there are exceptions, just ask the Nintendo Wii U, which launched in 2012, flopped spectacularly, and was discontinued in 2017 right after the Switch swooped in to save Nintendo's reputation. Ouch. Then there's the opposite end of the spectrum, the PlayStation 2. This console was so successful, it stuck around for nearly 13 years, finally ceasing production in early 2013, the same year the PS4 hit the shelves. Its online services survived until 2016, proving that even in the age of PS4 and Xbox One, the PS2 was still kicking, baby. The PS2 lasted long enough to see entire console generations rise and fall, and honestly, we couldn't have asked for a more enduring friend. Nintendo PSP. The PSP had a bit of a hidden superpower. If you were willing to tinker with it, players could unlock the ability to run emulators and basically turn the handheld into a retro gaming machine. Once that was set up, you could play everything from NES classics all the way up to some Nintendo 64 titles. I know this isn't the most intense hidden secret, but if you didn't realize, you can probably do it today with relative ease. Speaking of, surprisingly easy to hack.
With those settings selected, plug the PSP into a computer by using a micro USB cable.
If you were even slightly tech savvy back in the day, you probably knew the PSP could do way more than Sony intended. One of the most famous tricks was something called the Pandora's battery. It sounds dramatic, but it was basically a way to force the system into recovery mode. By modifying a battery, you could make it boot the PSP straight into a state where custom firmware could be installed. Once that was done, the console opened up completely. You could run homebrew apps, emulators, and even play downloaded game files. It was way too easy to turn this console into a tiny little custom handheld.
But I'm sure you would totally purchase the PS1 game on the PSP's PSN store if you could, right?
The concept was interesting.
Please welcome the latest addition to the PlayStation family.
Looking back, the PSP really does feel like the little sibling of the PlayStation family. The all-black design, the familiar button layout. It was just a PlayStation controller with a screen. But the concept design, not nearly as cool. It had a clean look, sure, but the feel of it wasn't perfect for everyone. The buttons were flatter than usual, which made button mashing feel like button slapping. The analog stick also wasn't the typical raised kind, instead being a small, flat, circular pad. If you had big fat boy hands like me, you'd be furious. DualShock Lingo.
PlayStation Portable there's.
No toilet paper. No toilet paper. No toilet paper.
Not many people realized the PSP could double as a translation tool, and it actually had software built for exactly that. Talkman was designed as a language learning app, but it also worked as a real-time translator using a microphone attachment. You could connect the mic to the top of the system and then just speak into it. The PSP would process what you said and translate it into another language on the spot. This was pretty impressive for the time, particularly since it took the iPhone years to have the same technology. Unfortunately, every time I lifted my PSP up to have a chat with my Japanese roommate, he just wanted to play it. Is that racist? I think that might be racist.
Hungry as soon as I got to the room. It was so hot.
Could connect to TV.
And then this end we're going to plug into the AV inputs on the TV, which are the yellow, white and red.
Even though the PSP was built for handheld play, you could actually hook it up to a TV and use it like a mini console years before the Switch. All you needed was a compatible component AV cable. The setup was pretty straightforward. Plug the colored AV cables into your TV, then connect the other end to the video out port on the PSP, and as long as your battery wasn't about to die, you were good to go. That said, the results weren't perfect. Because of the PSP's native resolution, games often looked a bit blurry when stretched onto a bigger screen. It worked for a laugh, but just play it normally, you weirdo.
Because then it will remove the border from the edge. Now to put it back onto here, you just need to tap that screen button again and it will come back onto here, or unplug the AV cable.
PS3 and PSP.
Connect to PSP. Immediately goes into USB connection. Please wait.
The PSP had a surprisingly advanced feature for its time. Remote play with the PlayStation 3. In simple terms, you could stream certain content from your PS3 straight to the handheld. And I know it worked well because I actually did it and enjoyed it. You couldn't play full PS3 titles, but some PSN games like Bionic Commando Rearmed were actually compatible and could be played this way. On top of that, the PSP could run PlayStation 1 games directly, which made it feel like a portable throwback machine as well.
Is it this one? Yep. So the format doesn't work on the PSP because it's an AVI file.
Portable browsing.
So now that we're connected, we are ready to access the internet.
These days, having a web browser on a device feels like a basic requirement. But back in the early 2000s, that wasn't a given at all. A lot of devices didn't even have Wi-Fi, which sounds wild now. That's part of what made the PlayStation Portable stand out. It came with built-in Wi-Fi and could actually browse the internet, which was pretty forward-thinking at the time. You could load web pages and even download things like music, videos, and images straight onto the system.
Not too surprising there. Most website browsers do work with Google. It's a pretty simple website.
PSP Hi-Fi.
And finally, a bag, so you can make the PlayStation Portable docking station portable itself.
If your PSP speakers aren't cutting it, there were some serious over-the-top accessories to fix that. One of them was the Game Expert Phase 4 PSP Hi-Fi, which basically turned your handheld into a full-on sound system. You dock the PSP into it, and suddenly you've got 23 watts of stereo audio blasting through mid-range speakers plus a subwoofer underneath, pushing out some heavy bass. It was cumbersome and useless, but so am I, so I can't talk shit.
And secondly, so you can simply, once you finish playing with your PSP, put it in and it will automatically charge.
Go explore.
There were definitely announcements of it coming, but there's very little information about whether it actually released. So if it did, it was a very small scale release, but some crucial software that used the GPS didn't release in America.
The PSP having Wi-Fi was already a big deal, but it didn't stop there. It could actually double as a GPS. With an add-on called Go Explore, you could turn the handheld into a simple navigation device without even needing an internet connection. The setup was pretty simple. You'd plug a GPS receiver into the USB port, launch the Go Explore software, and suddenly your PSP was giving you directions like a dedicated GPS unit. I went through so much effort to get it running, presented it to my old man expecting a thank you, and he just kept using his Melways. For my non-Australian fans, a Melways is a giant book with maps of Australia. For my younger fans, a map is like Google Maps on paper.
And then, magically, the satellite is talking to your PSP and showing you exactly where to go.
PCSP.
So now, theoretically, I should be able to just type in setup and it will maybe run setup. Good start.
Thanks to the hacking scene around the PSP, a whole wave of homebrew developers went mental, experimenting with turning the handheld into something completely different. Believe it or not, people even got versions of Windows and Mac style interfaces running on it. Before you get too excited, it wasn't the full experience. These weren't real operating systems, just visual skins that mimicked how they looked. You could move around the interface and use a few basic apps, but that was about it. Still kinda cool. Minesweeper on the toilet, count me in.
My mouse is nearly off the screen at this point, and the start menu still hasn't opened.
Portable radio. Did you know that starting with the 3.80 firmware update, players could stream internet radio directly on the systems? All you had to do was connect to Wi-Fi, open the internet radio feature, and you were in. From there, you could download one of a few radio player options onto your memory card and start browsing stations. And there were over 50 to choose from, none of which were even 10% as entertaining as Daxter, but still. Remote play predecessor. One of the standout features of the PSP was its multiplayer, especially how it handled game sharing. Titles like Tekken 5 Dark Resurrection and Metal Gear Peace Walker let one player host a session while others joined using a downloaded demo version of the game. It was a really slick way to play together without everyone needing their own copy of a game. There was also a more old school trick involved, kind of like the PS1 disc swap days. You could start the game, enter the ad hoc multiplayer screen, then swap the UMD into another PSP. If you timed it right, both systems would stay connected and let you play. A bit janky, but still came years before Remote Play on Steam. Home of the spin-offs. The PSP definitely had appeal for casual players, but it really thrived with die-hard PlayStation fans. Sony's reputation helped bring some serious big titles to the handheld, including Crisis Core, Final Fantasy VII, God of War, Chains of Olympus, and Metal Gear Solid Peace Walker. These weren't just throwaway spin-offs either. They explored new parts of their stories that hadn't been shown before, which made them feel important. New fans to these series should be made well aware that some of the best entries in their respective franchises lived on this humble little rectangle. Multimedia champion.
Why is PlayStation Portable so important at this stage in the game?
Before smartphones took over everything, the PSP was basically your all-in-one entertainment hub. You could load it up with music, watch videos, browse the internet, and even store photos all in one little handheld. You could customize themes, organize files, and treat it almost like a tiny computer in your pocket. For a lot of people, the PSP wasn't just for games, it was their first real digital device. Compared to the more game-focused Nintendo DS, it felt like a glimpse of what future devices would become. For me, it felt like something I couldn't resell years later because of all the questionable data I downloaded on it.
Opportunities for downloadable entertainment content are first in this industry.
Almost as strong as the PS2.
Forget the rat. The Baron wants him.
Don't worry, Jack. I'll save you before you know it.
The PSP wasn't just impressive for a handheld, it was straight up competing with home consoles at the time. Visually, some of the games came surprisingly close to what you'd expect from a PlayStation 2. Developers really pushed the system hard, with titles like God of War Chains of Olympus showing just how much it could handle. You had detailed character models, full voice acting, and proper cinematic cutscenes, which made it feel like a full console experience you could carry around. I remember exclaiming loudly when I first played it, "This looks better than our PS2," and trying to wrap my head around how this was even possible.
Thank you. Now bring me back a nice stack of those gold.
The worst stick drift.
I snuck up on him real good. You what? I snuck. Snuck? Yeah, snuck. Is that even a word? Yeah, you know, it's like before you sneak up on someone, you're getting ready to sneak.
Long before stick drift became a common complaint, the PSP had already had its own version of the problem, nub rub. That's what I'm calling it, I hope it catches on. Its single analog nub could start acting up over time, either becoming unresponsive or randomly moving on its own. Dust buildup, general wear and tear, and internal damage from rubbing. The frustrating part was how tricky it could be to fix. Unlike modern controllers, repairing or replacing the nub wasn't simple and sometimes required an entirely new console.
You have a snack? I consume a healthy amount of suckers online every day. Like that answer.
PSP camera.
Using a PSP camera. So here's what happened.
Move over, Game Boy camera. Did you know you could turn your PSP into a camera? The PSP camera plugs straight into the USB port and attached to the top of the system. Once it was set up, you could open the photo section and launch the camera from there. If you're from the West, you might have missed this, as it didn't arrive in the US until 2010, 4 years after dropping in Japan. At just 0.3 megapixels, the quality wasn't amazing, but it was still fun.
This was a good thing to film on the PSP because these are so big, so you can actually make out what the hell we're filming.
PS2 and PSP.
Я ничего плохого не сделала.
The PSP was obviously pretty connected to the PS3, right down to its home screen, but while not many people noticed, there were a few games that linked the PSP and the previous generation's PS2 together in some pretty creative ways. SOCOM US Navy SEALs Fireteam Bravo 2 on the PSP could connect with SOCOM US Navy SEALs Combined Assault on the PS2. Completing certain objectives in one game would unlock content and even affect gameplay in the other. It wasn't a huge feature overall, but it was one of few you could find hidden on these systems. Tilt FX. If you ever wanted motion controls on the PSP, there was actually an accessory for it. Made by DIDN, the Tilt FX let you control games by physically moving the system. Getting it set up was actually super easy. All you had to do was have a PC, install software on the PC, connect your PSP with a specific cable, load specific files out of the PSP, then plug the separate purchase sensor into the audio port, and boom, easy as pie. Or beef Wellington. Once it was working, tilting the console would control movement in supported games. It wasn't compatible with everything and was basically a huge waste of your time. Huge waste of your time. Ridge Racer.
What the title is going to be by the way this game will actually start.
Anyone over the age of 25 knows this dead meme, but I have to bring it back for our younger viewers. At Sony's 2006 E3 conference, Kaz Hirai revealed that PlayStation 1 games would be playable on the PSP, which was already a pretty big deal. To show it off, he booted up the original Ridge Racer live on stage, but instead of just focusing on the feature, the internet locked onto something else entirely: his vocal delivery. The now famous Ridge Racer moment quickly turned into a meme and spread everywhere.
Game is powered by Namco. It's Ridge Racer. Ridge Racer. Remember that one?
The first console with a digital-only version. For a lot of hardcore fans, the PSP 1000 and PSP 2000 are still the go-to models. Later versions added improvements, but the most noticeable redesign came with the PSP Go. Sony completely removed the UMD drive, meaning it only supported digital games, and this was kinda rough back at release. Today, it's barely worth talking about.
Pocket-sized, download-only PSP Go.
Region-free. Region locking has always been a bit of a sore spot in gaming since it stops players from using games outside their console's region, but did you know that the PSP was the first Sony system to be region-free for games? That meant you could import titles and play them without any restrictions, which was a huge win for players chasing Japan-only releases. So if you wanted to try something like Final Fantasy Agido, you could just pop it in and go. No extra hoops. CFW cheat. If you had custom firmware running on your PSP, one of the most popular tools you could use was CFW Cheat. It was a homebrew app that let players load in cheat codes and mess around with their games in ways the developers definitely didn't intend. To use it, you'd install the program, then open the cheat menu before launching your game. From there, you could load in particular effects for particular titles. Want infinite lives in Grand Theft Auto Liberty City Stories? No problemo. Feel like taking down enemies in one hit in God of War Ghosts of Sparta? It's on, Donkey Kratos. The UMD.
It is based on a new optical disc medium developed by Sony called Universal Media Disc.
The PSP used a pretty unique type of media called the UMD, which stands for Universal Media Disc. It's a small optical disc housed in a plastic cartridge, and funnily enough, the PSP was the only officially licensed device that ever used it. Many people assume that the GameCube and PSP shared the same cartridge type due to their size, but the GameCube actually used a disc called Mini DVD. In terms of storage, a single layer UMD could hold up to 900 megabytes, while a dual layer version could go up to 1.8 gigabytes, and that was enough to handle full games and even movies.
A first in this industry.
San Andreas story.
No! Oh, shit, hell! Oh, Mama! Mama! Come on, bro! Mama!
Both GTA 3 and GTA Vice City ended up getting prequels on the PSP with Liberty City Stories and Vice City Stories, which were later ported over to the PlayStation 2. Because of that pattern, a lot of people expected a San Andreas story to follow, but it never happened. Did you know the idea was actually explored? The size of the map in San Andreas was just too big to fit onto a UMD, so Rockstar decided to not even attempt it. Instead, they kind of made up for it by releasing a short in-engine video that explained the events leading into Grand Theft Auto San Andreas. Thanks, Rockstar. That's just as good as a game. Idiots.
Now the way I see it is that we don't have a choice. Ain't nothing to feel bad about. You put a gun to a brother's head, brother's gonna do what he's told.
Forward thinking.
Space. We could all use more of it. But how much is enough?
Fresh off the success of their first PlayStation and hot on the heels of their recently released and soon-to-be blockbuster console, the PS2, Sony was already looking forward to the future. Sony began the planning stages of the PS3 all the way back in 2001, barely a year after the launch of the PS2. This continued their trend of thinking ahead, starting all the way back with plans for the PS2 beginning shortly after the release of the PS1. This is even more impressive when you consider much of the technology that went into the PS3 hadn't even been invented or constructed yet back in 2001. Technology moves fast, but PlayStation moves faster.
We have come for your PlayStation 3! We design the next generation of entertainment! No! It's mine! The human is too strong!
Cryptic marketing. The PS3's marketing campaign was nothing if not memorable. Sony's first major ad for the PS3 featured a baby doll in a stark white room with a PS3 console going through a series of emotions which aired during the World Series. The ad was undeniably weird, but this was actually by design. Sony purposely created an ad campaign which would get people talking, and to their credit, it worked. Sony would continue releasing cryptic and completely unhinged ads for the PS3 until adopting a far more conventional marketing strategy after the console's launch. However, even 2 decades later, people are still talking about the crying baby ad, which proves their marketing strategy was successful. The vertical slice.
Okay, listen up! Aim straight!
These days, publishers use all manner of deceptive marketing for their upcoming games, but back before the release of the PS3, gamers were quite a bit naiver. To demonstrate the power of their upcoming console, Sony debuted several game trailers to show off what the PS3 was capable of. However, most of these trailers were nothing more than conceptual trailers or vertical slices of what the devs hoped to accomplish, with their game created specifically as a demo reel for internal use within the publisher. One of these vertical slice demos became infamous when Sony showed off Guerrilla Games' in development Killzone 2 internal demo as actual gameplay on stage during a PS3 presentation. These exaggerations rightfully blew up in Sony's face, and gamers have been much more skeptical about supposed in-game footage ever since. Demand overload.
Good luck getting your hands on one of these. There's only 40,000 PS3 consoles being shipped to Canada. And when you divide that among the thousands of retailers from coast to coast, only a handful will go to each store.
Just like the launch of any new console, demand far outpaced the available stock. However, after the universal success of the PS2, itself an extremely in-demand console at launch, hype for the PS3 was hitting a fever pitch. Gamers camped outside of retail stores for days before the launch, and hundreds of customers would show up for opening hours for stores that only had less than 50 consoles in stock. However, this shortage also led to quite a few unfortunate instances in which some campers outside stores were held up at gunpoint, others were robbed in the parking lot attempting to leave with their new PS3, some were trampled by mobs rushing electronics stores, and someone was even shot for simply trying to purchase the latest PlayStation. Unfortunately, this is a trend that still continues even today, although the increase of online shopping has at least mitigated many of these instances.
For a couple days now, they've been waiting out front. They know what's available, they know what's there, they know what to expect, and at least they're guaranteed to get one unit.
Lackluster launch. Launched at the tail end of 2006, Sony's PS3 was one of the most anticipated console releases of all time. But for those who managed to secure a console on release day, might have been extremely disappointed by the lack of console-exclusive titles in the early days of the PS3. While there were standouts such as Insomniac's Resistance: Fall of Man, many of the PS3's best launch titles, which released in the following months, weren't available on day one, and players were stuck with a hand of lackluster games or third-party releases that were also multi-platform. 2007 proved to be a great year for the PS3, with titles like Naughty Dog's Uncharted Drake's Fortune a year after the PS3's release, but for those first few months, the options were pretty sparse.
Whoa there, cowboy.
Non-developer friendly.
Meet the Cell broadband engine. It's the digital soul of the PlayStation 3.
These days, the PS3 Cell processor is widely regarded as one of the most powerful console engines even by today's standards, but it was also a nightmare for game designers to develop for. The Cell processor's complex architecture meant that utilizing its many features and unlocking its full potential, as developers had with the PS2's architecture early in its life cycle, was much more difficult this time around. Over time, studios managed to understand the hardware and create some of the most stunning games such as Naughty Dog's Uncharted series and The Last of Us, or Santa Monica's God of War 3, but the difficulty in developing for this overpowered system led to many multi-platform games running better on the Xbox 360 than the PS3 early on.
It's faster, and it's smarter, which means, without much effort, we can conjure up a tempest.
Sold at a loss.
And they still have to pay for the payoff, up to $700 a piece.
Given the Cell processor tech Sony was utilizing in the PS3 was new and untested, along with the inclusion of the included Blu-ray player and Sony's Emotion engine, it was also very expensive. At launch, every PS3 cost Sony $800 to put together, but to keep the cost at least somewhat consumer-friendly, Sony sold the PS3 for at most $600 at launch, which was still staggering for the time. This led to a loss in profit for Sony every single time a PS3 was purchased. This also didn't help Sony in their competition with Microsoft's Xbox 360, which was already $200 less at launch. 2 years into the PS3's lifecycle, Sony managed to trim the cost of manufacturing the PS3 and even eventually cut the price of the PS3 itself down to $300, finally making the PS3 profitable for Sony over the PS3's entire console cycle.
If money's no object, you could go on eBay, but buyer beware. The highest bid tonight was nearly $10,000.
Budget Blu-ray.
But at 50 gigabytes, a Blu-ray disc is nearly twice the capacity of an HD DVD, giving game developers the ability to create worlds that stretch far beyond the horizon of previous consoles.
Sony's decision to include a Blu-ray player might have led to development costs of the PS3 being higher, but for consumers, the PS3 was the best option for getting into Blu-ray. Much like with the PS2, Sony was the cheapest option in town for the then new home media format, with dedicated Blu-ray players starting at roughly $1,000 at launch. With Microsoft betting on HD DVD being the next media market, Sony's decision to back Blu-ray for media and their game discs likely led to the format's dominance, with non-gamers bringing the console into their homes and eventually leading to game sales as customers realized their new PS3 Blu-ray player also played games.
Twice the space? 4 times? How about 10 times the space?
Free PSN. It's hard to imagine now, but in the early days of online gaming, the service was completely free. Crazy, I know. With both Sony and Microsoft taking their first steps into online gaming with the PS2 and OG Xbox respectively, the PS3 era is when home console online gaming exploded, and in the early days of this new frontier, entry was completely free. While Microsoft would change for Xbox Live, Sony's PSN on PS3 didn't charge a single cent for players to play online with their friends, likely leading to more players choosing the PS3 for their online gaming. Sadly, and like all good things, Sony eventually jumped ship and began charging for their online services. But for a time, we had no idea how good we had it. Familiar font.
This is living.
One of the most immediately noticeable things about the PS3 is the familiar font Sony chose for their logo for the PlayStation 3. Designed before the rest of the console, Sony owns the specific font that was made famous by its use in the Sam Raimi trilogy of Spider-Man films, also produced by Sony. The design of the font influenced the design of the console, resulting in smoother, rounded edges compared to the PS2. Interestingly, Sony would drop the familiar and famous font in the later years of the PS3's production, but it still remains just as synonymous with the PlayStation 3 as it does with Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man.
You do too much. You're not Superman, you know.
Boomerang Banana. Just like with any console, the design went through a number of iterations before the final design was decided upon, and the same is true for the controller. However, few controller design concepts have been as infamous as the initial Boomerang design for the PlayStation 3's controller. Although never planned for release with the console, the Boomerang remains one of the most bizarre designs for a controller outside of the N64's. This wasn't the only major hurdle the PS3's release controller suffered through, however. The initial release was missing the much beloved rumble feature during Sony's ongoing litigation for patent infringement on the technology, and tried to gaslight gamers into thinking that rumble was so last gen, and 6-axis was the future before settling their legal disputes and eventually releasing the fully equipped DualShock 3. PS3 SSD. The PS5 technically wasn't the first Sony console to allow you to add an SSD for a boost in performance. While fairly common these days, SSDs would cost you an arm, a leg, and a kidney back in the mid-2000s. But for anyone dedicated enough, it was entirely possible to install an SSD into your PS3 for faster load times and smoother textures. Granted, it was nowhere near as easy to swap in as it is now on the PS5, but with the advancements in tech and tools making it easier than it was during the PS3 days, it's still an unadvertised feature only the most dedicated PS3 aficionados are even aware of. Black Hole Simulator. The PS3 was one of the most powerful consoles of its time, and more than just gamers took notice. Scientists took a bunch of PS3s and by linking them together, created a supercomputer to study black holes and its effects on gravity. Around the same time, the US military purchased 2,200 PS3s to build their own supercomputer, the Condor Cluster, which also happened to be one of the most powerful supercomputers at the time. This experiment ended up costing them well over $600K, but was still cheaper than a supercomputer at the time. However, unlike the NASA scientists, the military forgot to turn off the auto update for their PS3s, and when Sony patched out the ability for the PS3 to run Linux, the military was left with roughly 2,000 base PS3s. I'd hate to be the one who had to explain that their supercomputer was suddenly inoperable.
Maximum velocity achieved. Prepare to fire escape thrusters.
Ready?
Ready?
Ready.
Delayed.
But Sony has some competition.
These days, both Sony and Microsoft release their consoles not only in the same year, but often within the same month. But back in 2005, Microsoft had a year-long head start on Sony and the PS3. Releasing a full year after the Xbox 360, the PS3 was originally planned to release alongside the Xbox 360, but was delayed due to a single laser component for the Blu-ray drive. Sony would eventually change manufacturers of the part, finally ramping up production for the 2006 release, but Microsoft getting a head start in the console wars played a significant role in the PS3's struggles early on in its life cycle.
But it'll still be a tough decision for those willing to endure the elements.
Missing ports. Sony was incredibly ambitious with the PS3, and much like the controller, the console itself went through a number of changes before its final release. The original concept console shown off to the public had a ridiculous 2 HDMI ports, 6 USB ports, and most bizarrely, 3 Ethernet ports. However, by the time the PS3 released in 2006, these numbers were scaled back to a more reasonable single Ethernet port, 1 HDMI port, and 4 USB ports. Likely, Sony was attempting to boast about the PS3's capabilities before analyzing the actual cost of production, leading to a much more modest port situation in the final PS3. PSN down. In 2011, one of the most significant events in Sony's history with PlayStation unfolded. The PlayStation Network was hacked, resulting in a massive data breach of Sony's servers, with hackers accessing and stealing thousands of players' personal information. The hack led to the PlayStation Network shutting down for weeks, and what's worse is the hackers used an exploit Sony was fully aware of, forcing Sony to admit their fault and publicly apologize in an unprecedented press conference.
誠に申し訳ございませんでした。
After relaunching PSN, Sony offered players their choice of a number of PS3 and PSP games for free as compensation for the outage, and the hackers were never discovered. Successful ending.
Zeus! Your son has returned. I bring the destruction of Olympus!
There's no denying the PlayStation 3 stumbled out of the gate at launch. Released a year after the Xbox 360, difficult hardware for developers, a lackluster lineup of games during its crucial release window, and the PSN outage of 2011 no doubt made the PS3 Sony's first major stumble in the console market. However, by the end of its life cycle, the PS3 managed to sell a modest 87 million units worldwide. While nowhere near the projected 150 million Sony hoped for, or even the 140 million PS2 sold, the PlayStation 3 still managed to barely outsell Microsoft's Xbox 360's 84 million units, even with a year-long head start. It might have been a rocky start, but came down to a photo finish at the end.
Do not deny me my revenge!
World record holder. Nowadays, large multiplayer games like Fortnite and PUBG are fairly common, routinely bringing in 100 players per match. But even these juggernauts pale in comparison to MAG on the PS3. With a title that quite literally translates to Massive Action Game, MAG has the distinct honor of holding a Guinness World Record for most players in a console FPS, with a staggering 256 players possible in a single match. This isn't the only Guinness World Record a PS3 game holds either. At the time of its release, Grid 2 set a world record as the most expensive commercially available video game at $175,000 in the US. For this absurd price, players would get a PS3, a racing jumpsuit, and a customized Bach Mono supercar. This record has since been broken by even more outlandish collector's editions, but this was still unprecedented for the time. PS3 DualSense.
You're gonna need to run. Now hold on tight.
Backwards compatibility will always be a major talking point for gamers, but one aspect of the PS3 that is almost completely overlooked is the console's forward capability. While PS4 controllers can still work on the PS5, both PS4 and the PS5 DualSense can also be used on the PlayStation 3. By simply connecting one of the modern controllers to the PS3 via USB cable, you can use the much sturdier PS4 or PS5 controller on your aging PS3. And as long as you're okay with some features being unavailable due to the difference in controller layout, can finally replay some of the PS3's most frustrating games without worrying you'll snap the flimsy PS3 controller in frustration.
Repeat it.
What you say goes.
Good.
February 29th, 2010.
We abandoned the cities to the Chimera and retreated to scattered military bases and outposts. The Chimera had won.
Some of you might be too young to even know what the Y2K bug even is, but there was another bug that affected launch PS3s that even Sony never anticipated. When the PS3's console calendar switched over to February 29th, 2010, any base fat PS3 couldn't comprehend the 29th as a real date, and for some reason refused to connect to the PlayStation Network, leading to widespread connection issues for many early adopters of the console. Some offline games even ran into issues and refused to play despite not needing any online services whatsoever. The issue was resolved within a couple of days, but it was still an interesting oversight that strangely no one prepared for.
We're too close, Captain. We've got to get clear.
Hold this position. That's an order.
It's too late. No one's coming out of there.
I said.
Gran Turismo Trainer.
The best Gran Turismo players in the world get a chance to compete in professional racing. Dude, this is real.
Gran Turismo has always been one of the most realistic sim racing series ever, but one would never expect these skills in Gran Turismo to be transferable to the real world. That is, however, until Nissan created the Gran Turismo Academy in 2011.
You really think you're going to take a kid who plays video games in their bedroom, you're going to strap them to a 200-mile-an-hour rocket? It'll tear him to pieces.
And out of 90,000 applicants, Jan Mardenborough won the competition and ended up competing for Nissan in 2013 24 Hours of Le Mans, in which he ended up placing third in his debut year. This is even more impressive considering Mardenborough had never raced in real life before, and even professional racers who have trained for years struggle to finish the 24-hour endurance race. Martin Burroughs' story would even later be adapted into a live-action film released in 2023 by Sony Pictures.
You've raced it, what, like 1,000 times? Now you just gotta do it in real life.
Electric Boogaloo. Gaming isn't exactly an inexpensive hobby, but the PS3 could have potentially been costing players more than they realized. A study found that a PS3 used the same amount of electricity as 5 refrigerators. Now, while that sounds like a lot, it really isn't, especially compared to what typical household appliances use these days. Your Roomba uses more electricity, for example. However, every time your PS3 sounded like a jet engine about to take off, it likely wasn't doing your electric bills any favors. And definitely don't tell your parents it was really your PS3 adding to your monthly bill, not you forgetting to turn off the hallway light. PS3D. It might be difficult to remember these days, but Sony went in hard on 3D being the next gaming evolution back on the PS3. Alongside some games being playable in 3D, proudly promoted on the game's cover art, Sony also developed their own television dedicated to 3D gaming on the PS3. The PS3D TV not only allowed you to play your games in 3D, but it also had the incredibly innovative feature dubbed SimulView. With SimulView, 2 players could play on the same screen and through the 3D glasses have their own full-screen experience playing couch co-op. Naturally, interest in the 3D fad faded just as quickly as it began, but the idea of SimulView is still incredibly innovative, and it's a shame it hasn't been re-implemented outside of Sony's one-off PS3 3D TV. True backwards compatibility. Those who managed to secure one of the launch or fat PS3s benefited from Sony's inclusion of backwards compatibility all the way back to the PS1 right out of the box, greatly expanding the PS3's catalog by literal generations. However, this is one feature that Sony unfortunately removed in subsequent updates to the PS3 model. Although PS1 and PS2 titles were still available for purchase through PSN, anyone who bought a late-gen PS3 and no longer had their PS2 were stuck with glorified coasters. That's not to say backwards compatibility was removed entirely from the later PS3s, however. In fact, even the newest model PS3 can still play PS1 discs, even though this feature was never advertised. Just a shame they removed arguably their most popular console from the PS3's backwards compatibility, and now the feature is virtually non-existent on current PlayStations. VP of Everything.
Thinks it's a movie. This is pretty common, Jason. I mean, just look at this game. You know, you got Nathan Drake's epic gunfights, impossible escape scenes, and a plotline filled with betrayal. Give her an hour or so, she'll know it's a video game.
It's been 2 days.
Ready, honey?
Yeah! Yeah, I'm gonna file this under not an issue.
After leaving their original confusing marketing trailers behind, Sony adopted what is arguably their most popular run of advertisements in all of PlayStation's history. Kevin Butler, the unofficial VP of nearly everything PlayStation 3, instantly became a fan-favorite character whose humorous takes on everything PlayStation appealed to both gamers and non-gamers alike. However, after a string of wildly popular ads featuring Kevin Butler, after the actor Jerry Lambert appeared in another ad for Bridgestone tires in which a Nintendo Wii was being played, even though Jerry wasn't even the one holding the controller, Sony made the idiotic decision to fire Jerry and even sue him for creating confusion over which console he represented.
Come on!
I know, right?
What's wrong with him?
Naturally, this didn't go over well with fans, but Sony has yet to revive Kevin Butler despite the PlayStation brand being in more dire need of his services than ever before.
In the end, I guess what they say is true. If you want to reignite gamers' love affair with your brand and create the face of an industry, all you need is a middle-aged guy with ridiculously good-looking hair and a necktie.
Where is that man?
What was your favorite game and memory on the PS3? Share your trips down memory lane in the comments.
Secret port. One of the strangest mysteries about the PS Vita is that random I/O port on the top, because nobody really knows what it was meant for. It's just there, begging to be filled. Ew. No official use, no accessories built around it, nothing. The common theory is that Sony originally had plans for some kind of add-on or expansion, that never ended up happening. What makes it even more suspicious is that the port was completely removed in later models, like they quietly gave up on whatever it was supposed to be. Because of that, it's become a bit of a joke online. People claim it's for everything from a Sony waffle maker to full-on life support. Screenshot.
Hey everyone, this is a short video showing you how to take screenshots on your Vita.
Every Sony console has a long list of features unknown to the average player, and one of the most substantial on the PS Vita is that pressing the start and PS buttons simultaneously takes a screenshot. It's a super simple way to capture moments from your games to share to friends. But that information wasn't fed to players effectively because I had no idea.
So you go up to your photos.
Product placement.
If your PS Vita system won't power on when you press and hold the power button for 5 seconds, this probably indicates that the battery's drained.
Here's a quirk of the Vita that basically comes down to promo. The charger can be plugged in either way, but it can only actually charge if the PlayStation logo is facing you. Flip it the other way, nothing. No charge, no warning, just vibes. So why even design it like that? If it physically fits both ways, you'd assume it should work both ways. But nope, there's clearly a correct direction, even though nothing about the port tells you that. Sony just wants to stare at you while they give you power. It's alpha energy.
You can turn the system on once the orange light is solid, but the battery will only be partially charged.
Too many symbols.
What you've come to know as NGP, our next generation portable, is officially named PlayStation Vita.
Here's a detail about the PS Vita that sounds completely made up until you actually check it. And trust me, I started just to make sure it was possible. There are 1,638 tiny PlayStation symbols etched into the rear touchpad. We're talking X, triangle, square, and circle, all packed together in this barely noticeable pattern. The weird part is, why? It doesn't affect gameplay. It's not something you can really see while using it, and most players probably never even realized it was there. I'll tell you why. Because it's sick.
The features alone are cutting edge.
Apple theft.
You can see first off that each page you can set a different color, which is nice.
The PS Vita basically borrowed a page straight out of smartphones with how it handled its home screen. If you hold your finger on an icon for a couple of seconds, everything starts to shift and you can move apps around however you want, just like an iPhone or iPad. But then it adds its own twist. Instead of one long screen, you can create up to 10 separate sections, each holding up to 10 icons. So now you're not just organizing apps, you're organizing entire pages of them. But seriously, how many sections does anyone actually need? It's not that good.
So this little wave icon here is where you're going to choose your new color, so you can choose any color.
Dust protection.
The PlayStation Vita inspires new ways to game.
The PS Vita game slot has this tiny little plastic flap covering it. And while it technically makes sense, it's also kind of annoying. The purpose? It helps keep dust and dirt out, which is great for protecting the cartridge and the system. Fair enough, but actually opening it, that's where things get frustrating. If you don't have nails, get a grip. Puns.
Experiences are possible.
Where's the manual?
Okay. Memory cards are very
super tiny,
very small.
One neat but slightly overlooked feature of the PS Vita is how it handled game manuals. Instead of including a physical booklet, which we all miss dearly, the manual was actually stored directly on the cartridge itself. So when you selected the game from the home screen, you could just tap into the manual right there. It's a smart idea, but also kind of easy to ignore. You know what isn't easy to ignore? The giant map that came with RDR2.
Easily do that. Hit this button again.
So it brings open a list of tabs. Also on the top of the screen you can notice there's little icons for everything you have running in the back.
Eye strain.
Alright, so here is my magnifying glass solution that I've made.
There is a surprisingly useful feature hidden in the PS Vita settings that a lot of people probably never touched. If you turn on zoom in the accessibility options, you can press the PS button plus square to zoom in on the screen and move around. It's one of those things that doesn't sound like much, but when you start using it, you'll never stop. Games with small text or lots of detail suddenly become way easier to read and see. Something like Darkest Dungeon, for example, benefits a ton from it. It's weirdly hidden and unknown, considering how useful it actually ends up being.
Alright, so here's the top view of it. And because I play at an angle, I kind of play like this.
Produce station. As we've seen, the PS Vita had some pretty odd little features, and this is definitely one of them. Using the built-in mic, you could make noises, talk, hum, whatever, and the system could turn it into a basic music track. The strangest part is how random it feels. It's not something most people bought the PS Vita for, but the apps are all there ready to be used. Menu appearance.
When running these apps, you're able to return to the main menu by using the home button, and each app has its own little homepage that you can revisit by using the touchscreen.
The PS Vita had a pretty slick little feature that a lot of people probably didn't fully use. By double tapping the PS button, you could bring up a menu showing all the apps currently running in the background. From there, you could quickly jump between them or close them out. It also tied into how customizable the system felt overall. You could tweak how your menus were laid out, manage everything in a way that felt closer to a smartphone and not like a PlayStation. It was like a smart station.
It's worth noting that the main interface for the Vita is interacted solely through the use of the touchscreen.
Modding.
But when I picked up this 13-year-old Sony PlayStation Vita for the first time last week, holy freaking crap.
Even though the PS Vita has been discontinued for years, it's weirdly more alive now than it probably should be. The homebrew scene in 2026 has pushed the system way beyond what Sony originally intended, unlocking features that almost feel illegal, and probably are. Through mods and custom firmware, players have managed to get things like enhanced PS4 remote play working, along with experimental Android emulation. Nice.
Or the hacking and the modding and the crazy stuff you can do, which I'll show you. It would be the aura, the vibe. The Vita has this energy that is so hard to explain, but once you feel it, you can't unsee it.
Worst screen to cut costs. One of the standout features of the original PS Vita was its OLED screen, which looked insanely good for a handheld at the time. Think about how big a deal it was when the Switch finally got OLED. Colors were super vibrant, blacks were super deep, and everything just popped in a way most portable devices couldn't match. Then the later Slim model came along and switched to an LCD screen instead. The reason? Cost cutting. It's a weird trade-off when you think about it, especially when people could actually notice a difference.
This one and this one. This one's much brighter than the new PlayStation Vita. But that doesn't really matter. I believe that this one is better for playing outside. This one obviously looks nicer.
Rear trackpad. One of the things the PS Vita did that PS fans never expected was its rear touchpad. On paper, that opens up all kinds of possibilities, like interacting with games in ways that feel totally different from normal buttons. In something like sound shapes, you could use it to draw or interact with elements in creative ways, which sounds cool, but also kind of raises questions. How often did games actually need it? And how many players even remembered it was there? Sony failed the Vita.
6-axis motion sensing technology.
The PS Vita is broadly considered a failure, with many thinking it was the market and competition. But there's a pretty strong argument that the PS Vita failed because of how Sony handled it. At launch, the PS Vita felt like a big deal. Great visuals, dual analog sticks, loads of potential. But the moment things started slipping, Sony seemed to lose interest. Big events and trade shows would come and go with barely a mention of it, like it didn't even exist anymore. It was always going to struggle, but the strangest part is how quickly Sony seemed to give up. Poor Vita.
No matter where they are or what game they're playing.
Power secrets.
Then let me show you how to enter safe mode on your PS Vita.
The PS Vita had a bunch of power button features, and here's a few. Press and hold the power button, PS button, and R shoulder button at the same time for 5 seconds and you enter recovery mode. Press and quickly release the power button to put PS Vita into standby mode. Press and hold the PS button for 2 seconds and release, and a panel pops up allowing you to change brightness, music, volume, disable mic, and change audio chat settings. A lot of little features. Press and hold the power button for 10 seconds and release, and you force the PS Vita to power off immediately. And that's just a few. The whole system runs on that one button.
Press X, or in case you have a Japanese PS Vita, then you'll need to press the circle.
Game screen links.
They have customized startup screens for everything. So they'll have like a news, which will jump you straight to the website.
Each game on the PS Vita had its own custom screen, which sounds like a small detail, but actually went a bit further than expected. Instead of just showing the game icon, it could include extra features like links to the game's official website, and sometimes even a direct shortcut to the PlayStation Store for DLC. On paper, that's pretty convenient. Everything tied to the game is right there in one place.
So they'll have like a news, which will jump you straight to the website, and then a DLC, which will jump you straight to the store page on the PlayStation Store.
PS3 compatibility.
Then you wanna look for this app right here, PS3 gameplay remote.
The PS Vita and the PlayStation 3 had this whole cross-connection thing going on that sounded way bigger than it actually ended up being. In theory, you could play with or against each other across both systems in compatible games, which is ambitious as hell. Then it went even further. Some titles let you pause your game on the PS3 and pick it back up later on the PS Vita, or the other way around, you know, in case poopies.
I think I'm having on PS3. If you know about this, please let me know in the comments below.
Record-breaking launch.
Join us now for a look behind the machine's massive midnight launch celebrations and the day one demand that followed.
Maybe the handheld was on paper a failure, but it did break one really substantial record. The PS Vita launched with the biggest day one lineup in PlayStation history. Admittedly, that's only 25 games, but a record nonetheless. They also had already announced on day one over 100 games in development, including big names like Uncharted, Call of Duty, Little Big Planet, and Assassin's Creed.
To have their asses professionally kicked by amazing cosplayer and Wipeout warrior Amy Nakajima.
A first for AR. The PS Vita pushed into some pretty experimental territory, touching on augmented reality almost a decade before everyone else. Using both the front and rear cameras, it could take real-world images and drop them straight into gameplay, blending reality with the game world. You could scan AR cards or QR codes through the camera app to trigger content, with games like Invisimals letting you battle creatures in your own surroundings. I'd love VR on the Vita, but then it'd be called PSV VR. That just won't do. Wireless Wonder.
3G model from the first edition bundle. I know I haven't done this yet, but let's get it going.
The PS Vita was pitched as this always connected handheld thanks to having both Wi-Fi and even optional 3G support built in. You could stay connected, check social apps, and keep up with other players wherever you were. It almost feels like Sony was aiming for a fully online handheld before that was really the norm. Unfortunately, for things like 3G, you needed a separate data plan, so it ended up in this weird spot. Super connected in theory, but kind of restricted by the era.
I have to say, graphics-wise, this is a very, very nice piece of hardware.
PS Life.
Everyone wants the Taco Bell $5 box because everyone wants the new PlayStation Vita.
The name PS Vita actually has a pretty meaningful origin. Vita translates to life in Latin, which ties directly into what Sony was aiming for with the system. The idea wasn't just to make another handheld, it was to create something that blended gaming with everyday life. As Sony's John Kohler explained, the goal was to build a device that combined entertainment and social connectivity into one experience. And when you look at what the PS Vita could do, games, apps, online features, it might have thrived in 2026 more than 2011. Walkman before you run.
But Sony saw something quite different.
The PS Vita didn't just come from anywhere, it was shaped by someone with a serious history behind them. Takashi Sagabe, a designer from Sony, was involved in its creation. And here's the wild part, he also worked on the original Sony Walkman back in 1979. That's a pretty incredible link when you think about it. The Walkman basically defined portable entertainment for its time, and years later, Sagabe was helping design a device aiming to do something similar for gaming.
The Sony Walkman has
PC Vita.
Now, this video here is about, I guess, PC connectivity.
The PS Vita made it really easy to connect with your PC, and you didn't even need cables if you didn't want them. Using the content manager, you could set everything up wirelessly and start transferring files straight to your system. That meant moving games, music, videos, and photos across without any hassle, which felt super convenient for the time. But it didn't stop there. You could also stream supported media directly from your PC to your PS Vita. So instead of just being a handheld for games, it doubled as a portable media hub you could sync with your setup at home. That's it. I'm blowing dust off my Vita tonight.
So, straight from my PC, you can see some songs that I got.
All the sensors. The connection to Life, or Vita, encouraged a connection with the 5 senses. This is why PS Vita gamers have 5 ways to control the action. Depending on what each game supports, players can use the 5-inch touchscreen, the back touch panel, familiar PlayStation buttons, circle, square, triangle, X, shoulders, D-pad, dual analog sticks, and a built-in gyroscope sensor to tilt the unit in various directions. This was an intentional nod wrapped up into their Life marketing. It's clever, but God, is it unnecessary. Lifesaver. One of the nicest quality of life features on the PS Vita is how forgiving it is when your battery dies mid-game. Instead of losing progress or being kicked back to a menu, the system actually remembers exactly where you were, so once you plug it in, charge it up and turn it back on, you're dropped right back into your game like nothing ever happened. No reload screens, no restarting sections, just straight back into the action. It's such a small detail, but it makes a huge difference, especially for long play sessions that get cut short by a dead battery.
Peace all of a sudden.
It's just I don't go around wearing endangered species on my feet.
Yeah, well, they cost me a lot. More dough than you make in a year.
Oh, yeah? Which year? I've had a couple good ones.
Rare physical games. Released in 2018 by DIDN, Hoopslinger is basically what happens if you take classic light gun games and replace bullets with, yeah, poop. It's not great. In fact, almost nobody played it, which is usually not a glowing review. But then in 2019, things got weird. A company called Limited Rare Games stepped in to make a physical version, immediately raising eyebrows by copying logos from other companies like it was a school assignment due in 5 minutes. Then they went bankrupt. Of the 1,000 games made, Sony's minimum, only 84 were actually sold. Now those copies go for thousands. That's an expensive poop. Brick code.
You can't track your ass down.
In 2018 as well, the PS4 had a meltdown trigger hiding in plain sight, and all it took was a message. Players started warning each other about a weird combo, the word Ugus, paired with a glitched out symbol the console couldn't even read. Open it and your system would spiral into a non-stop crash loop like it was having a midlife crisis. Not fully bricked, but close enough to ruin your day. The real kicker, this wasn't some hacker-only trick. Anyone could send it. So one salty opponent in an online match could go from losing to straight up sabotaging your console. The kind of toxic energy I aspire to have.
While they're odded out and they watch your skin get ripped off right in front of them, I would love to do that for them.
Cooking up a lawsuit.
Welcome to Cooking Mama Cook Style.
If you're not deep into Cooking Mama lore, don't worry, most of us have lives. The series originally built its reputation on those super popular Nintendo DS games from way back in 2006. Fast forward to Cooking Mama Cook Star, and things got a little overdone. Please appreciate my cooking humor. It popped up on the Switch in 2020, then randomly showed up on the PS4 in 2021, which already felt cursed since the series basically lived on Nintendo consoles. But here's the kicker, God, I'm saying kicker a lot, it probably shouldn't have existed at all. The actual rights holder, Office Create, came out and said the publisher dropped the game after losing the license. Yep, just went for it anyway. Legal chaos followed, and it's kind of why you can't buy it anymore.
You can do it! Great! That's it!
It's okay to be dim.
Today we're doing a quick tutorial and showing you how to dim the light bar on your PS4 DualShock controller.
Here's a fun fact I never discovered in my 10 years playing this console. The PS4 controller's light bar isn't just there to look pretty, it's also secretly draining your battery like a tiny glowing vampire. Thankfully, you can tone it down without performing tech wizardry. With your console and controller on, just hold the PlayStation button, bring up the quick menu, and from there, head into the device settings and find the option to mess with the light bar brightness on your DualShock 4. Drop that thing to dim and call it a day. Or a night.
Select it, you'll notice that the light changes automatically.
Until dawn.
Yep. Limbs are still working.
For a brief moment in the PS3 era, Sony looked at the Wii and said, yeah, we're doing that, and came out with the Move, motion controls, glowing sticks, the whole shebang. It had a couple of fans and some decent games, but let's be real, nobody was lining up to defend it like it was the PS2. The wild part, Until Dawn actually started life as a Move-exclusive horror game. Early versions had you waving the controller around like a budget ghost hunter, pointing flashlights and solving puzzles in first person. Thankfully, someone stepped in and said absolutely not. Ditched the motion controls and turned it into the cinematic horror game we got on the PS4 in 2015. Thank you, that person.
Josh seemed pretty happy to get rid of us back there, didn't he?
Michael, I had no idea you had such a gossipy side. Is this the politician in you?
PS4 saved my life. Every now and then people say games help them through tough times, but this is one of those stories where gaming straight up helps someone escape a nightmare. In 2020, a teenage girl in Japan traveled to meet an older pen pal who turned out to be exactly the kind of person you'd think on the other side of a teenage pen pal relationship. He took her back to his place and kept her there for weeks. The turning point came when she got access to his PS4 while he was out. Using the console's internet features, she managed to contact police and share enough info for them to find her. Thankfully, she got out safely. The weird twist, if he'd managed to upgrade to the PS5 later that year, this escape might have been way harder. Sony actually ditched the dedicated web browser app on the PS5, hiding internet access behind a weird messaging workaround. And let's be real, when you're literally trying to escape a kidnapper, you don't exactly have time to figure out the secret UI tricks of the PS5. Thank you, Suez Canal, or whatever made PS5s impossible to find back then.
I got kidnapped! I was kidnapped!
What do you want us to do?
Could you take me to the PlayStation, please? Please!
You go first.
Fortunately, we have a product for people who aren't able to get some form of connectivity. It's called Xbox 360.
Right. So stick with 360. That's your message if you don't like it?
If you have zero access...
All right. This one lives in the take it with a grain of salt category, but it's way too juicy to ignore. When Xbox One had that absolute disaster of a reveal, Sony came in swinging with a cheaper price and that iconic how to share used games video. Like they were dunking in slow motion. Seriously, watch the video, it's really funny. It looked like the master plan all along, but apparently it wasn't. Industry chatter over the years suggests Sony might have originally been heading in a similar direction with restrictions, then saw Microsoft getting absolutely roasted and went, yeah, never mind.
Thanks.
PlayStation.
Spring cleaning. If your PS4 has started acting like it's running through mud, menus lagging, cutscenes stuttering, load times taking a coffee break, it's probably not dying, it's just messy. Over time, all the installing, deleting, reinstalling, screenshots, clips, and random downloads basically turn your system's database into a junk drawer. Eventually, the clutter slows everything down. The fix, though, is surprisingly easy. Boot into safe mode by holding the power button until you hear a second beep. From there, pick the option to rebuild the database. It won't delete your stuff, it just reorganizes everything so your console can think straight again. It might take a bit depending on how packed your drive is, but honestly, it's like giving your PS4 a much needed cleanup. Easy screenshots.
So taking a screenshot is very easy on the PlayStation 4.
Taking screenshots on PS4 should feel slick, but by default, it's like the console wants you to earn it. You hit an insane moment in Assassin's Creed, go to capture it, and suddenly you're holding the share button like you're charging a special attack. By the time it snaps, the moment's gone. Luckily, you can fix that. Tap the share button once to open the menu, hit options, then jump into share settings. From there, look at the share button control type and swap it to the setup where a single tap grabs a screenshot instantly. Way better.
Play menu, press twice for stopping or starting a video clip.
Can't read CDs. The PS4 could handle a bunch of different formats. USB drives, DVDs, Blu-rays, no problem. It felt like it could read anything you threw at it. Until you tried a CD. Yep, your old school compact disc just gets ignored like it doesn't exist. The reason is surprisingly simple. The PS4 wasn't built with the right kind of laser to read CDs in the first place. So it's not broken, it's just picky. Like me. Throwback. If you kept an eye on Sony during the PS4 era, you probably saw a bunch of wild special editions tied to different games. But one of the coolest wasn't about a game at all, it was about the console. For PlayStation's 20th anniversary in 2014, Sony dropped a limited PS4 that looked like it had time traveled straight out of the PS1 era. Grey color, classic vibes, even the controller got a retro treatment. And they didn't just make a random number either, only 12,300 units were produced, matching how many original PlayStations were made for launch back in 1994. Mojo, can you buy me one, please? Trophy hunting.
Like to earn a platinum trophy in just 1 hour.
Digital stores across consoles have quietly turned into absolute chaos. Somewhere along the way, actual curation vanished, and everything started looking like the deepest, weirdest pages of Steam. You've got AI-generated nonsense, copycat games, and just endless, annoying filler. It's honestly exhausting to scroll through. One of the earliest warning signs of the store going to shit was 1,000 top rated on PS4 back in 2017. Its whole gimmick, you could earn a platinum trophy in under an hour. No effort, no gameplay, just vibes. This was basically a paid trophy. Sony pulled it fast, but it came back as slide, offering a platinum in under a minute. Incredible, and not in a good way. gyro type.
Normally you would type using the directionals or the analog stick controller, pressing X to enter the letters. But this feature, if you just press R3, click it in like that, it switches to sort of motion mode.
Typing with a controller is usually a special kind of pain. You're slowly nudging on analog sticks across keyboards like you've got all the time in the world, just trying to spell one word without losing your sanity. I've actually gotten quite good at it, but I watch my girlfriend and good lord. But the PS4 actually has a sneaky trick most people never use. When the on-screen keyboard is up, click the right stick and you'll get this little floating cursor. Instead of dragging it around normally, you can tilt the controller and use motion controls to aim way faster. It feels weird at first, like you're trying to land a plane, but once it clicks, it's superior in every way.
Which method is better? So let's get into it.
Quick switch.
This time, guys, here we're going to show you guys how to switch between apps really fast.
The Xbox One absolutely nailed quick app switching, while the PS4 kind of just stood there like, yeah, we tried. But to be fair, it's not completely useless when it comes to multitasking. It just hides its good ideas like secret bonus levels. If you've got the game open and something else, like the browser running, maybe you're half paying attention to a conversation while grinding a Destiny, you can quickly bounce between them by double tapping the home button. That's it. No complicated menus, no nonsense. It's weird that Sony never really shouted about this feature, leaving me to do it. Feature!
Go ahead in your library and you can quickly double tap and it'll bring you right back to the game.
PS4 games on your Vita.
Oh my god! Oh my god! Oh my god!
One of the PS4's big look at this features was letting you play your console games on a PlayStation Vita, and yet somehow loads of people just never tried it. If you've got both systems, you can stream your entire library to the Vita. Setting it up is pretty straightforward, and once you've done it, you could play infamous Second Son on top of a mountain. Technically, sure. Realistically, it's way more useful for those lazy mornings where you want a few matches of FIFA without getting out of bed.
I bet you if you were like using like I don't know, not like a hotspot, like an actual Wi-Fi connection, I bet you it would work a lot better.
Voice control.
But before we do that, you need a mic.
The PS4 quietly borrowed a few tricks from Kinect. One of the weirder ones is that you can actually talk to it like it's your assistant. Not in a life-changing AI companion way, more like, please open this before I lose patience. I turn it on, head into settings, go to the system options, and enable voice control, and after that, I can start tossing basic commands at my console. The best part, you don't even need the official camera setup, any microphone works, including your headset, so you can boss your PS4 around without buying extra gear. It's pretty intense, and AI will definitely come back with a vengeance in 50 years, but worth it for now.
PlayStation. Start trophies.
PlayStation View.
And this year, we also delivered on the promise of PlayStation View, one of the most ambitious services we've created since launching the network.
Remember PlayStation View and PlayStation TV? No? Good. That's the point of this list. PlayStation View and PlayStation TV were two products Sony developed in an effort to break into the video on demand and television streaming markets, respectively. If their obscurity wasn't evident already, neither lasted long enough to catch wind. Sony would close down PlayStation View in 2020, 5 years after its launch, citing the slow growth in the market. As for PlayStation TV, the service died as quickly as it launched, only surviving a couple of years before its plug was pulled in 2015.
Without the purchase of a multi-channel bundle.
Bungie controller. Before Bungie officially joined the PlayStation family, they were already hiding out behind the scenes in pretty unexpected ways. While Sony was working on the DualShock 4, they brought Bungie in to give feedback, mainly so shooters wouldn't feel like you were aiming with a wet noodle like on the old controller. Bungie helped shape how the new pad handled and even had input on features like the share button, which is kind of wild when you think about it. That early teamwork naturally led into Destiny getting heaps of PS4 focused content, and years later, it all came full circle with Sony straight up acquiring them in 2022. Dark Help. Here's a surprisingly cool behind the scenes detail. The PS4 messaging system actually owes a bit to Dark Souls. Yeah, that game where communication is basically caveman notes on the floor somehow helped fix real console messaging. Back on the PS3, typing messages felt like punishment, so Sony went looking for a smarter approach. Turns out the preset phrase system in Dark Souls, you know, those iconic tri-finger butthole style messages, was the inspiration. Shuhei Yoshida even confirmed its influence on how the PS4 handled quick communication. Really cool. Button remapping.
You can easily remap your controller buttons via the PlayStation 4 menu, which is great for mobility impaired players or if you just want to change on the controller.
Every now and then you boot up a game and realize the controls are locked in like they were set in stone, and suddenly you're stuck playing in a way that feels completely wrong, at least to you. Back in the day, this was just your life now. Good luck. But in 2015, Sony added system-wide button remapping to the PS4, and it quietly fixed the problem. You can head into accessibility settings and swap buttons around like however you want, turning a controller into whatever layout makes sense for you. Nice. Thanks, Sony.
Automatically, it's put circle to X, and you would just go to confirm.
Face off.
We just hooked up my brand new PlayStation 4. I want to show you guys exactly what happens when you boot it up and kind of show you guys some of the menus.
Having a camera track your every move feels very Xbox energy, but the PS4 quietly dipped its own toes into that territory too. If you've got the PlayStation camera hooked up, you can actually turn your console into something a little bit creepy. Head into your settings, find the login options, and switch on facial recognition. After that, your PS4 can recognize your face and sign you in automatically. No controller needed. It's one of those features most people never bother setting, but once it's on, it feels weirdly futuristic.
But the cord doesn't reach this far, game. Yes, this is me. Hi! Hi, Mom!
PS4 era baby names.
What's that now? Don't like the cold?
People naming their kids after pop culture isn't new, but the PS4 era definitely added some interesting options. According to baby name stats, Kratos has been slowly climbing since God of War, with noticeable spikes when the newer games dropped, though it's still pretty rare overall. Weirdly, Atreus is way more popular, breaking into the top 500 names, which means there are a lot of kids out there unknowingly carrying emotional baggage already. Aloy from Horizon Zero Dawn also saw a boost, especially after Forbidden West, though still niche. Meanwhile, names like Joel, Ellie, and Nathan didn't change much since they were already common. And yes, sadly, no confirmed cases of babies named The Last of Us Part 2 Remastered. Most expensive PS4. Fancy dropping $54,000 on a PS4? Yep, didn't think so, but this thing still exists anyway. A special PS4 Pro was made to promote Sekiro Shadows Die Twice, and it looks f***ing sick. We're talking a bamboo shell, blood-splattered paper design, and even a matching controller. The text on it translates to Wolf, which is the main character's nickname, and if you manage to get one, you earned the nickname yourself. Only about 40 of these were made and handed out through promos in places like Europe and Australia. Woo! So good luck ever seeing one in person, if you're not me. Woo! It was never properly sold either, which explains the insane value. Fruit Ninja. Yeah, the PS4 was great, but dropping $400 on launch still hurt a bit. Most people waited patiently for a price drop. Then there's this guy in France who decides patience is overrated. In 2019, a 19-year-old somehow walked out of a supermarket with a PS4 after paying about €9. His genius plan, he weighed the console like it was a bag of fruit at the self-checkout and slapped a produce label on it. Honestly, it's both impressive and incredibly dumb. The story gets better because he went back to try again and was arrested.
Give me a box, like what the heck, I'm about to get freaking robbed right now.
Rhombus with a purpose. Compared to Sony's earlier consoles, the PS4 kind of looks like it was designed by someone who discovered angles for the first time and got a bit excited. But the slanted rhombus-style shape isn't just there to look fancy, it actually has a purpose. All the important stuff on the front, like USB ports and power buttons, are pushed to one side so you're not blindly poking around trying to find them. And the tilted back, that's not random either. It helps you hide cables so your setup doesn't look like a spaghetti disaster behind your TV. So yeah, it's stylish, but also surprisingly practical.
And to the whole PlayStation design, engineering, and development team, thank you for being uncompromising in the pursuit of a revolutionary new console.
The secret orientation.
So I'm going to show you to attach the stand to your PS5.
The PlayStation 5 has a bit of a weird design quirk. It kind of feels like a spaceship, but the fact that you need a stand just to keep it stable feels like an odd choice. Most consoles don't ask for that. Naturally, people started experimenting, and it turns out there's a way to position it without the stand, just not one Sony officially supports. By laying it horizontally in reverse, with the disk drive slot pointed upward, you can actually balance it just fine. In that sense, it almost feels like a better setup. The only catch is that if you're using discs, you'll need to insert them upside down, which is easy to forget. There was even a moment when Sony accidentally showed this orientation in an ad before quickly pulling it, which makes you wonder, if it works this well, why wasn't it ever made official? I'm kidding, we know why, it was money.
Alright, so you want to look at the bottom of the PS5.
Universal settings. Every time you start a new game, you're usually hit with the same setup questions. Difficulty, subtitles, brightness, and if you're my girlfriend, inverting Y and X. Don't ask. Thankfully, the PlayStation 5 has a way to skip a lot of that. If you head into settings and check out saved data and game app settings, you can set up presets so the console automatically picks things up like difficulty, performance mode, resolution, subtitles, audio, and even camera preferences for you. Thanks, PlayStation. I love you. Easy to open up.
It's got some serious Stormtrooper vibes going on, and what's that on the grip? The underside of each grip has tiny X's, circles, squares, and triangles printed all over it.
There's a surprising amount of design work that goes into consoles and controllers. They're basically functional pieces of art. At least I think so. Sony tends to stick with clean, uniform designs, but players love putting their own spin on things with custom mods. Normally, that kind of tinkering can be a hassle. Tiny screwdrivers and magnifying glass. The DualSense controller makes things a bit easier. The plastic panel on the back can be snapped off without needing any serious tools, giving you quick access to the inside if you want to take a look or make adjustments. Seriously, go look at your controller. Not a hole to be seen.
Vibration motor hardware. As usual, we'll tackle the battery first.
Control Center helps you.
Press the PS button on your controller to open the Control Center.
Games have gotten way more complicated over the years, so it's basically inevitable you'll hit a wall at some point. Normally, that means jumping online, scrolling through Reddit threads, or watching YouTube tutorials, but the PlayStation 5 actually has a built-in way to help with that. If you've got PlayStation Plus and the game supports it, you can pull up the Control Center with the PlayStation button and get hints or walkthrough style help without ever leaving the game. It's all provided directly by the developers too, which makes it feel as reliable as it could possibly get.
On PS5, brings you the hints and tips you need without leaving the action.
Screen sharing. As consoles get more powerful, they're not just improving graphics, they're improving socially. The PlayStation 5 has a feature that lets you share your screen with friends in your party, which is cool on its own, but it goes a step further. You can watch your friend's gameplay while playing your own using picture-in-picture. It's like having a second perspective running at the same time. Me and my buddy used to set up 2 TVs and play our own games for fun. Now we don't have to. We still will. 3D audio without a headset. When Sony was promoting the PlayStation 5, 3D audio was a big deal, marketed as this next level immersion that puts you right in the middle of the action. A lot of that advertising also pushes the Pulse 3D wireless headset, making it seem like you needed it to get the full experience. But here's the thing, you don't. The PS5 already has 3D audio built in, and you can access it straight from the settings. The headset might be the easiest way to enjoy it, but you can set it up with regular TV speakers too. Just takes a little bit more effort, like running a console's acoustic measurement tool to tune everything properly. If you move a chair in your house, you will have to redo it. Sorry.
3D audio tech provides a convincing representation of sounds behind, above, and below you.
Game Boost. One of the best things about the PlayStation 5 is how it handles older games. Most of the PS4 library works through backwards compatibility, and while a lot of titles run as they did before, with faster loading thanks to the SSD, some get a noticeable upgrade through something called Game Boost. This feature lets certain games run at a higher frame rate, and even improved resolutions, making them feel smoother and more modern. It's not automatic across the board, as developers need to patch their games to support it. Still cool though. Single button mute. This one I just learned, and it actually helps a lot. Remote controls always seem to vanish the second you actually need them, usually buried in the couch or hiding somewhere that makes no sense. Luckily, the PlayStation 5 has you covered without needing to grab anything else. The DualSense has a built-in mic and speaker, And that little button under the PS button does more than you might think. Tap it and you mute your mic. Hold it down though, and it mutes everything, all audio from the console. A trick that you'll find yourself using more than you'd think. Plug and play.
I bought this back in February of 2018, and yes, I can confirm that it does work with the PS5 along with the PS4.
The PlayStation 5 might be more powerful than the PS4, but its storage can fill up way faster than you'd expect, especially with how big modern games are. You can move PS5 games onto an external drive to free up space, but you won't be able to actually play them from there, which kind of limits the usefulness. Where external drives really shine is with PS4 games. Unlike PS5 titles, they run perfectly fine straight from the external hard drive, so you can keep your older library there and save your SSD for newer games. You can even set the drive as the automatic download location for PS4 games. Pretty clever.
PS5, and you can download and save your game applications to this hard drive.
Mouse and keyboard.
Today I'm going to show you how to connect your mouse and keyboard to a PS5.
This was pushed in the early days, but kind of died off after release, with most players who didn't follow initial marketing not even realizing it's possible. Those extra ports on the back of the PS5 can actually do a lot more than you think. You can plug in a keyboard and mouse and use them just like you would on a PC, which instantly changes how certain games feel. Even if the ports were already taken, Bluetooth works too, so you're not stuck. It might sound unnecessary since the DualSense does the job for most games, but some titles just play a little better this way.
Even though the PS5 has native keyboard and mouse support, it's still up to the game developer's discretion if they allow it.
PS5 activities.
Playing solo is a great way to immerse yourself in rich, interactive stories and worlds.
If you're over the whole process of loading into Grand Theft Auto 5, waiting to get into GTA Online, and then finally joining a friend just to play what you actually wanted, yeah, the PlayStation 5 has a fix for that. It's called Activities, and it basically cuts out all that wasted time. Instead of digging through menus, you can jump straight into specific parts of a game right from the home screen. As lead PlayStation architect Mark Kearney explained, multiplayer games can show you live activities you can instantly join, while single-player games can suggest missions or rewards you can dive into immediately.
Cards for any current or in-progress activities may display your progress and an estimate of how much longer they should take to complete.
Ergonomics.
The PlayStation 5. This is a big and very powerful console.
Controller designs can change a lot from one generation to the next, but Sony has mostly stuck to a familiar formula across its consoles. Instead of reinventing everything, they've refined the design over time, and the DualSense is the clearest example of that approach. It's slightly bigger and more rounded than the DualShock 4, which makes it sit more comfortably in your hands during longer sessions. Small tweaks like shifting the light bar and adjusting the shape might not seem huge at first, but they do add up. The controller was actually designed to be completely ergonomic, which is probably why you feel far less hand cramps during marathon sessions.
Different, right? Depending on the material. And if this was glass, it would feel a certain way. And if this was wood, it would also feel a different way.
Phone control.
Do what you gotta do. Go where you wanna go.
The PS5 isn't exactly something you can take with you. Trust me, I've tried. But that doesn't mean you're locked out of managing it when you're away. That's where the PlayStation app comes in. It connects straight to your console and lets you handle a bunch of things remotely, even if you've got multiple systems at home. I know this sounds like an ad, but it's not. I just think enough people are not utilizing this goddamn tool. From the beach, I was able to delete games from my PS5 to make enough room for Crimson Desert, which I also bought and downloaded from the beach. I hate the beach, man. Challenges. The PlayStation 5 has a little nice feature to keep you on track when gaming. When you open the control center during a single player game, you'll often see activity cards pop up pointing you towards unfinished missions, side content, or even progress towards trophies you haven't unlocked yet. Some of them even estimate how long a task might take based on how you play, which is surprisingly handy. There's also challenges, which let you compete with friends or even global players, tracking things like speedruns and scores, so you can see exactly how you stack up. Most successful launch.
Were you just getting the console, or did you have a game?
I had a few games.
You had a video game too?
Yeah.
The PS5 actually had a pretty surprising record. Even with all the supply shortages early on, PlayStation 5 still exploded in popularity. Demand was through the roof, and it managed to sell 7.8 million units in its first year alone. That made it the most successful launch period for any PlayStation console ever, which is pretty wild considering how hard it was to actually find one at the time. It just goes to show how strong the hype was. People were willing to wait. refresh pages, and fight through stock drops just to get their hands on it. I, however, had a best mate who worked at JB Hi-Fi, and I can say this now since he doesn't anymore, I definitely took someone else's pre-order. My bad.
Probably won't be my last time buying one anyway.
Add an SSD to your PS5.
I'm here with WD Black, and today we're going to install the new SNA50p NVMe SSD for the PS5.
This entry is pretty self-explanatory, but let's talk about it anyway. Out of the box, you're working with around 667 gigabytes of usable space on your PS5. And with some titles pushing past 100 gigs, that disappears pretty fast. You can move games onto an external drive to clear room, but the PS5 games won't run from there, like I said, and you'll need a copy to get them back every time, which gets old quickly. It's a bit of a mess. That's why adding an external SSD is the smarter long-term move. It gives you a lot more space to work with and keeps everything running at full speed.
Design that is optimized for the airflow of the PS5.
Listen to music while you play.
So what you have to do is you just need to download the Spotify and log in.
A lot of people don't realize this, but the PS5 lets you play your own music while gaming, which is a game changer if you're sick of hearing the same soundtrack on loop. Whether you use Spotify or Apple Music, it's super easy to set up. Just download the app from the PlayStation Store, log in, and you are ready. Once you're in a game, hit the PS button to open the control center, jump into the music section, and start playing whatever the hell you want. With games like Elden Ring and Medieval Dynasty, I've zoned out for hundreds of hours listening to podcasts and playing.
To the PS5, let me just resume it again and
stream PS5 games to your mobile. The PlayStation 5 has a breakthrough feature called Remote Play that basically lets you take your games off the TV and onto your phone, tablet, or PC. So if someone's hogging the screen, you're not stuck waiting around. You can keep playing from another device as long as your internet's solid. To get started, you'll need the PS Remote Play app, which you can grab from your device's app store. After that, just enable Remote Play in your PS5 settings, follow the setup steps, and you're good to go. There's even a dedicated handheld specifically for this called the PlayStation Portal.
You want it? I've got what you like.
Sony wants you to clean.
サイズは幅 104mm、高さ 390mm.
If you just picked up a new PS5, you won't need to worry about this straight away, but it's something worth keeping in mind down the line. Dust buildup has always been a pain with consoles, usually because cleaning them properly meant taking the whole thing apart. Thankfully, that's not really the case here. Sony actually designed the PlayStation 5 to be easier to maintain, which they showed off in an early teardown before launch. To clean it, you just pop off the side panels and use a vacuum on the built-in dust catchers. That's it. No deep disassembly needed.
両側から大量の空気を吸い込みます。
Change your PS5 covers.
Step 2. Place your PS5 on a flat surface with a protective covering and take off the base.
Speaking of, some people love the bold, futuristic look of the PS5, while others think it's a bit over the top compared to the simpler PS4 design. Either way, it stands out. The good news is you're not stuck with the default white finish. You can actually swap out the side covers pretty easily, no tools required. Just pop them off and replace them with something new. Sony even sells official covers in different colors, so you can give your console a fresh new look without messing around with custom mods or complicated installs.
Place your PS5 on a flat surface with a protective covering. Only this time, make sure the PlayStation logo is facing downwards and the power button is facing towards you.
Universal button controls. Consoles might look the same no matter where you buy them, but games haven't always played by the same rules across regions. In the past, things like region locking and different control schemes made it a bit messy depending on where you were playing. The DualSense actually smooths one of those issues out. Traditionally, the cross and circle buttons swapped roles depending on the region. Cross was confirmed in the West, while Japan used circle instead. We saw this with PlayStation classics like Metal Gear Solid. It wasn't a huge deal, but it could definitely throw people off. Now things are standardized, giving players a consistent setup no matter where they are. It's a small change, but one that unifies us as gamers. Chat with friends without a headset.
One thing I was really curious about was exactly how good of quality the microphone would be on the underside of the controller.
One of the standout extras on the DualSense is the built-in microphone, which means you can jump into voice chat without needing a headset. It's convenient, you can send voice messages or talk to friends straight away without any extra gear. Unfortunately, it's turned on by default, which means it's very easy to forget it's live and accidentally broadcast whatever's going on around you. To avoid that awkward moment, it's a good idea to change the default setting, which you know from our previous entry on it. Good work.
We're gonna switch to that. This is what my voice normally sounds like with post-processing and different things like that. This is something that you guys are used to hearing within these videos. And now, again, we're right back to the controller.
Customize your create button.
We are going to have a look at the PlayStation 5 in-game recording feature and how it works, as well as taking screenshots and broadcasting.
If you've picked up a DualSense, you've probably noticed the create button sitting where the old share button used to be. Don't worry though, it's basically an upgraded version of the same idea. It still lets you grab screenshots or record clips, but with a bit more flexibility. By default, holding it down takes a screenshot, while double tapping saves a recent gameplay clip. It's quick and easy once you get used to it. The cool part is you're not locked into those controls. On the PlayStation 5, you can head into the settings and remap how the button works to suit your style. The PS5 continues to be an incredibly customizable experience.
Description, tags, and select what privacy you want.
Remap your buttons.
So if I go to the home screen on my PlayStation 5 right now, I want to go up to settings and select this.
Most games these days get the controls right, but every now and again you'll run into something that just doesn't feel comfortable. Or you might just prefer your own setup. That's where the DualSense really shines. You can head into the settings and fully remap your buttons. Whether that means swapping the analog sticks or flipping inputs like cross and circle because you're tired of Metal Gear Solid. Sorry to rail on MGS so much, Kojima. Send me a message. I want to be in Death Stranding 3, please.
I have on. Then also I changed the response rate for the different thumbsticks.
Use your old DualShock 4.
Back, left, right, jump.
Switching over to the PlayStation 5 doesn't mean you have to ditch your old habits completely. If you were used to the feel of the DualShock 4, you can actually keep using it, but with a small catch. It costs $800. No, it just won't work with the PS5 games, but it's perfectly fine for playing backwards compatible PS4 titles. So if you've got a big library or just prefer that older grip, you're covered. But also, grow up, it's a hip-hop world, keep up or get out of the way.
Showed up on my PS5, there it is, DualShock 4 wireless controller, so just go to it.
Check out these other great clips from MojoPlays, and be sure to subscribe and ring the bell to get notified about our latest videos.